Traitors always think they've won until the very end, never knowing that the silent ones deliver the deadliest blow. This is the storyteller's porch, where the most captivating counterattacks begin. Please note, the content of this story is a work of fiction, created for entertainment purposes and to convey humanistic values. Any resemblance to actual events or persons is purely coincidental. The stage lights dimmed, and the entire ballroom erupted in applause. Olivia Reed, in a pristine white dress, stood beside him, her smile gentle and poised, like a prized orchid cultivated at a prestigious university abroad. The moment she reached out to accept the portfolio, a single glance was all it took for me to see the bracelet on her wrist. It was a piece I had personally designed, a custom creation that took a master craftsman 3 months to complete. I had intended to wear it myself on our anniversary, yet there it was, on her arm. Liam Foster stood on the podium, his voice calm to the point of coldness, as if he were merely announcing a routine personnel change. As of today, Olivia Reed will officially assume the position of Vice President of Technology at Ethereum Tech, overseeing the new funding round and our brand upgrade initiative. As for her incentive stock options, they will be set at 8%, just as I promised. A few quiet gasps could be heard from the audience below. Everyone knew that 8% was what he had promised me. In the early morning hours just 3 months ago, he had held me in his arms, his voice deep and earnest. "Chloe," he'd said, "once this funding round is closed, I'll make up that 8% to you. You've been with me through so much hardship." When Ethereum finally rings the opening bell on Wall Street, the person standing by my side must be you. But now, the person standing by his side had been replaced by Olivia. Some people stole glances at me, others lowered their heads, pretending not to see. Still others were already frantically typing on their phones, afraid to miss the drama unfolding between the scorned wife and the old flame. Liam's assistant walked over to me, handing me another portfolio. He lowered his voice. "Miss Morgan," Mr. Foster said, "if you have a moment tonight, you should sign this. The investor contract needs to be signed tomorrow, and he doesn't want private family matters to affect the company's valuation." I lowered my head and opened it. The first page was a divorce agreement. The second was a declaration of marital assets. The third was a confirmation of a loan guarantee using the premarital condo listed in my name. The fourth was a supplementary clause regarding the technology licensing between my studio, Kiara Studios, and Ethereum Tech. At the signature line, they had even the Tevin pre-printed my name. I looked up at Liam on the stage. He was looking at me, too, his brow slightly furrowed, his eyes holding that familiar warning. "Don't make a scene. Be reasonable." I had been looking at that gaze for 5 years. Olivia looked at me as well, the corners of her lips curved ever so slightly. It wasn't a taunt, nor was it a look of triumph. But that very calmness stung more than a slap in the face in front of everyone. She was a brilliant actress, making it all seem as though nothing had been stolen, as if she were merely, and rightfully returning to a position that had always belonged to her. I closed the portfolio and suddenly let out a laugh. Then, I picked up essential champagne flute from the table and, in my high heels, walked step by step onto the stage. The entire hall fell so silent you could hear a pin drop. Liam's expression shifted slightly. He reached out a hand to stop me. "Chloe, don't make a scene." "Here. Make a scene?" I stopped in front of him, the smile never leaving my face. "Isn't today a celebration? You've prepared such a grand gift for me. Shouldn't I return the favor with a toast?" I turned to face the audience, all eyes eagerly awaiting the drama below. My voice wasn't loud, but each word landed with perfect clarity, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I congratulate Mr. Foster. You've finally brought home the one that got away." A wave of murmurs swept through the audience. The smile on Olivia's face froze. Instantly, Liam shouted, "Chloe Morgan. D.I." I ignored him, gently swirling the wine in my glass, looking him straight in the mouths. As I slowly enunciated each word. "I will review the documents. I can also sign my name. But, Liam Foster, tomorrow at 3 p.m. when you sign that contract, you'd better not regret it." With that, I tilted my head back, drained the champagne, and turned to leave. Behind me, I heard someone mutter under their breath, "Has Miss Morgan lost her mind?" I heard it clearly, but I didn't turn back. The crazy one was never me. They. I just truly believed that I would stand by and watch the stage I had poured my heart and soul into building be trampled upon by those two, and that I would even have to smile and applaud them. It was nearly 11 p.m. when I got home. I had just kicked off my heels when Liam followed me in. The door slammed shut with a heavy thud. He didn't bother changing his shoes or taking off his suit jacket, simply tossing the divorce agreement onto the coffee table, his face a thundercloud. Chloe Morgan, what was the meaning of all that today? I bent down to pick up the scattered papers, my tone even. When you gave the stock options to Olivia, did you ever ask for my opinion? That was a company decision. It's not what you think. Is that so? I flipped to the divorce agreement, my fingertip tapping lightly on the paper. Then is this also a company decision? Liam was at a loss for words. He forced himself to calm down, sitting across from me and rubbing his temples. Chloe, let's be clear. You are no longer suited to be involved in the company's affairs. Olivia understands capital and has resources overseas. Her return is only beneficial to Ethereum. As for us? He paused, as if searching for a more palatable way to phrase it. We really can't continue. I looked at him and suddenly found it all ridiculous. 5 years ago, when Ethereum was at its lowest, the company account had only $7,000 left. Suppliers were at the door demanding payment, and we couldn't even make payroll. It was I who sold the small house my parents left me, pulling out $500,000 to drag the company back from the brink. That day, in our tiny rented apartment, he had cried in my arms, his voice hoarse. Chloe Morgan, I will never let you down in this life. A man's words, when he has nothing, are used for vows of love. When he becomes wealthy, they are used to twist the truth. Seeing my silence, Liam thought I was wavering, and his tone softened. Regarding the house and the cash, I won't let you lose out. The Eastgate high-rise is yours, plus an extra $1 million. I'll continue to cover your mother's nursing home expenses. Chloe, don't make things ugly. This is the most dignity I can give you. I looked up at him, my gaze placid and cold. The expenses for my mother, has any of it not been drawn from my personal account? His face stiffened. I continued. And the Eastgate condo? Who paid the down payment? Who pays the monthly mortgage? My voice was calm, but every word was a sharp jab. Liam Foster, you take my money and use my house to act like you're doing me a huge favor. Don't you find that utterly ridiculous? Chloe Morgan. His voice shot up. Do you have to count every single penny like this? I looked him straight in the eye, the corners of my lips curling into a thin, cold line. You've already thrown the divorce papers in my face. If I don't calculate everything clearly, am I supposed to just quietly step aside for the two of you? He stared at me, the patience in his eyes draining away bit by bit. You've changed. I almost laughed out loud. Yes, I've changed. When you had nothing, I endured hardship with you. When you were too busy to function, I shouldered everything for you. You said the company needed absolute confidentiality, so I never even asked for my name to be on anything. Now you have money, status, and the blang confidence to stand in front of a crowd and speak eloquently, only to turn around and say I don't understand capital, that I'm no longer worthy to stand by your side. Liam Foster, it's not that I've changed. It's that you're not used to the person who has always cleaned up your messes, Chloe Morgan, no longer being obedient. My words seemed to strike a nerve he never dared to acknowledge. Liam's face instantly turned ugly. He was silent for a few seconds, then his voice turned. I see. Fine. I won't beat around the bush. Olivia is pregnant with my child. The glass in my hand paused for a fraction of a second. The next moment, I calmly placed it back on the coffee table. I looked at him, a feeling like a thin, sharp needle piercing my chest, a pain that numbed me. But on the surface, I showed nothing. So what? He probably didn't expect me to be so calm, so his gaze faltered. So this marriage must end. She can't carry the title of the other woman forever. I nodded slowly, as if I understood something truly laughable. You're asking your wife to make way for a homewrecker, and you still think you're preserving my dignity. Liam Foster, it seems you've made quite a bit of progress these past few years. I told you, it's not what you think. Olivia is not that kind of person. I looked at him, a slight curve on my lips, my eyes cold and sharp. Not what kind of person? The kind who knowingly gets involved with a married man, or the kind who sees something belonging to someone else and immediately wants it for herself? Enough. He slammed his fist on the table, his voice suddenly sharp. Don't say such ugly things. Our feelings had faded first. Olivia just helped me see clearly who I truly want to be with. I looked at him for a few seconds and then burst into laughter. The laugh wasn't loud, but it was bone-chillingly cold. Then do you know? The person you truly want to be with is currently wearing a bracelet designed by me, living in a house decorated by me, holding stock options that were meant for me, and leisurely waiting for me to sign my name to clear the path for her. Liam's face completely darkened. Chloe Morgan, I advise you to be sensible. Don't let everything end on an ugly note. I lowered my head and flipped through the divorce agreement again, leisurely. Turning to the last page. My fingertip tapped on the signature line. 3 p.m. Tomorrow is the funding round signing, right? He stared at me, his eyes full of suspicion. What are you planning to do? Relax. I closed the portfolio, looking up at him with a smile. The smile was faint, but it was enough to make him uneasy. I'm this reasonable. How could I possibly disappoint you? That night, Liam slept in the living room. I sat alone in my study, wide awake. Until dawn. At 1 a.m., Ethan Cole answered my call. The first thing he said was, "You're finally ready to make your move?" I gripped the phone, staring at the thick darkness outside the window, my voice so light it nearly dissolved into the night. Yes. It's time to close the net. There was a 2-second silence on the other end. Do you still have all the W.gone evidence? I do. Are you sure you can go through with it? I glanced at the wedding ring I had taken off, lying quietly on the desk, and smiled faintly. I couldn't before, because I thought people could be saved. Now, I can't bear to let myself continue being a joke. Ethan didn't waste any more words and got straight to the point. I've sent the email. Send over all the contract addendums, the company's transfer histories, server logs, and the original tech patent files. My team will start the asset preservation and evidence fixation process tonight. Okay. After hanging up, I opened my laptop. In the bottom corner of the screen was an encrypted folder with a very ordinary name. Old files. Only I knew that inside were the core assets, the parts that could not easily see the light of day. More importantly, it was what made Ethereum tech inseparable from me. The foundational recognition algorithm for Ethereum's first-generation smart lock was written by me. The entire core interaction logic for the RAS second-generation smart home security system was built by me. Even the proactive risk warning model for the entire home, the very thing Olivia was grandstanding about in front of the investors today, had its first prototype painstakingly coded by me over 4 sleepless months 3 years ago. Over the years, Liam's favorite thing to say was always, "Chloe Morgan, you're great at product development, but a company can't survive on product alone." He wasn't wrong. A company certainly can't survive on product alone, but without a product, it can't survive at all. And the truly fatal blow wasn't even that. The most terrifying thing was that, from the very beginning, the core patents and software copyrights were never registered under Ethereum's name. They were registered under Kiara Studios, a company where I held 100% of the shares. Back when the company was in its startup phase, and funding was a distant dream, our lawyer had warned us clearly. Core technology should not be put into a shell company. We had to establish a licensing mechanism from the start to give ourselves a safety buffer. At the time, Liam was focused entirely on marketing and fundraising. I reviewed every contract myself. He found the legal clauses too tedious and just signed his name on the last page. Later, when the company was back on its feet, he got busier and more confident, so confident that he truly believed everything Ethereum had today was built by him alone. He had even forgotten who truly owned the dazzling stage he was standing on. The next morning, I was woken by a frantic ringing of the doorbell. When I opened the door, Olivia Reed was standing outside. She was wearing an elegant beige suit, her makeup light, a box of pastries from a high-end bakery in her hand, looking every bit the well-intentioned visitor. I leaned against the doorframe, blocking her path. "What is it?" Olivia smiled, her tone perfectly soft. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" I told Liam that matters of the heart should be discussed between women to get things clear. There's nothing for us to get clear about. I looked at her, my gaze faint and cold. You want to take over, and he's willing to pave the way for you. A perfect match, really. But for a homewrecker to show up at someone's front door, to preach morality, that's not a very pretty move. The smile on her lips finally faded a little. Miss Morgan, I'm afraid you're going too far. Liam and I knew each other long before you did. If I hadn't gone abroad back then, did I force you to go abroad? I cut her off. And now you've come back to interfere in someone else's marriage. Did I force you to do that, too? Olivia stared at me, and a few seconds later, she suddenly laughed. I'm not here to argue with you. I just wanted to give you a piece of advice: be realistic. Liam is no longer the poor college student he once was, and Aetherian is no longer a small workshop that you can save just by selling a house. If you stay by his side, you'll be nothing but a hindrance. You can't really help him. She paused, then emphasized each word. But I can. At that moment, her eyes finally revealed her true self, undisguised ambition, a deep-seated sense of superiority, and a firm contempt for me. I understand capital, I understand branding, I understand the international market. He and I are people of the same world. Chloe Morgan, you've been left behind. I looked at her and found it strangely amusing. Olivia, do you know what I despise most about you? She frowned slightly. What? Even when it comes to stealing a man, you can't do it cleanly. I answered, leisurely, my tone calm, but every word sharp. A truly capable person makes him choose her when he has nothing. You, on the other hand, waited until I built the fasters stage and paved the road, then stepped on my achievements to pick the fruit, all while cloaking yourself in the mantle of destiny. Olivia's face finally turned cold. Do you really think you're so important? She sneered, her voice full of ridicule. At the end of the day, we're two sides of the same coin. She took a deep breath, apparently having lost the patience to pretend any longer. Her tone dropped. So I'll be direct. This afternoon's signing is very important. Liam doesn't want you there making a mess of things. If you sign obediently, the terms are still negotiable. But if you insist on making trouble, forget about the dignity you're clinging to. I'm afraid you won't even be able to hold on to the resources for your mother's treatment. I narrowed my eyes slightly. Are you threatening me? Olivia tilted her chin up, her smile chilling. Not a threat, just a reminder. Adults should always consider the price they have to pay for their actions. I looked at her for a few seconds, then suddenly leaned over and took a small black device from the shoe cabinet. Olivia's expression changed instantly. That was the memory card for the smart doorbell with a built-in camera. I held it up, shaking it gently in front of her. Your reminder just now was recorded very clearly. I smiled, continuing slowly. What do you think? If the investors find out that just before the signing, your company was busy threatening the founder's wife, using a sick person's medical treatment as a bargaining chip, will they find your management team to be very professional? Olivia's face finally drained of all color. I looked her straight in the eye, my voice not loud, but every word landing like a cold, hard stone. Get out. She stared at me for a full 5 seconds before turning on her high heels and leaving. At the elevator, she looked back, her voice like ice. Chloe Morgan, you'll regret this. I leaned against the door and let out a soft laugh. The one who will regret it won't be me. Closing the door, I immediately downloaded the video to my computer and backed it up to the cloud. I hadn't even sat down when my phone rang again. It was Henry Shaw, a former employee. Henry had been with me and Liam for 7 years. Of the first group of people who built Aetherian with us, he was the only one who hadn't been corrupted by money and power. The moment the call connected, he lowered his voice. Chloe, something's up. This morning, Liam had the finance department transfer $4 million to a company called Apex Strategy Group under the guise of a brand consulting fee. They said it was a down payment for Olivia to bring in overseas channels. But I checked that company was just established half a month ago. The legal representative is Olivia's cousin. My fingers paused. Can you get the documents? I took pictures, but finance will probably delete the records soon. Henry's voice was tense. Chloe, are they really trying to move money out before the tenting lace contract is signed? They aren't trying to. My reply was faint, but each word was as heavy as lead. They're already doing it. Henry was silent for a few seconds before asking quietly. So what do we do? Now? I stood up and pulled back the curtains. Morning light flooded the room, casting a cold glow on the stack of old research drafts on my desk. You don't need to do anything. Just keep everything you've seen, everything you've photographed, especially any contracts and financial processes Olivia has touched. I'll handle the rest. Okay. After hanging up, I immediately sent a message to Ethan. One more thing. Investigate Apex Strategy Group. Check all of Olivia's relatives and trace all abnormal money transfers in the last 3 months. Less than 10 minutes later, he replied, received. It was followed by another message. Chloe, just a reminder. The fact that they're rushing you to sign today probably isn't just about the divorce. Of course, I knew that. The divorce was just the outermost layer. What they really wanted was the key in my hands. At noon, Liam finally sent me a text. 2:30 p.m., come to the company conference. Room to sign the papers first. Don't force me to make things difficult. I glanced at the message and replied with a single word. Okay. Then I changed, did my makeup, and pulled my hair into a neat bun, choosing a prop in a simple black pantsuit. The woman in the mirror had slightly red-rimmed eyes, but her expression was exceptionally clear. 5 years of marriage, 7 years. Side by side, all for a betrayal so blatant they didn't even bother to hide it. It hurt, of course, it hurt. But when pain reaches its peak, one becomes clearer than ever before. When I arrived at the company, there were still 40 minutes until the signing was scheduled to begin. The receptionist's expression froze when she saw me, as if she didn't know whether to call me Miss Morgan or pretend she didn't know me. I didn't make it difficult for her, simply swiping my card and heading straight upstairs. Outside the executive office, it was strangely quiet. In the past, whenever I came, even the assistants would offer me coffee. Now, everyone kept their heads down, the air thick with an awkward and strange avoidance. When I pushed open the door, Liam and Olivia were reviewing the funding presentation slides together. Hearing the noise, they both looked up. Olivia's gaze swept over me first, then she smiled faintly. Miss Morgan, you're here. Liam didn't respond to her, just coolly pushed a stack of documents on the table toward me. Sign it. I sat down and calmly flipped through the pages. As expected, a few more pages had been added since last night. The new addition was a confirmation of a perpetual, exclusive technology licensing agreement. Its meaning was simple. All core technological achievements related to the smart home ecosystem, weather.com, current or in the next 3 years, belonging to Kiara Studios, must be licensed to Ethereum for free, and this license could not be revoked. To put it bluntly, they wanted to strip me of the last bit of value I held. I looked up at Liam, a slight curve on my lips. Your appetite has certainly grown. His expression didn't change. This is for the stability of the company's valuation, Chloe. Things have come to this point. We should both be rational. Stability? I laughed. You're using technology registered under my personal prime name to secure a funding round for you and your old flame, and you call that stability? Olivia, sitting beside him, spoke up, her voice gentle as if she were explaining a simple truth for someone else. Of course. Miss Morgan, if you truly cared about Ethereum, you wouldn't be strangling the company at a time like this. Having the core technology in a personal studio is already non-compliant. Liam is just diffusing a potential bomb for the company. I nodded, my expression very faint. Well said. With that, I put the documents down and looked up at Liam. I'll ask you one last time. You really want me to sign this? He looked me straight in the eye, not a hint of hesitation on his face. Yes. I smiled faintly, turned on the voice recorder on my phone, and placed it on the table. All right, then I'll also remind you one last time. My voice wasn't loud, but every word was irrefutably clear. The original technology licensing agreement between Kiara Studios and Ethereum, Article 7, Clause 3, states very clearly, any unauthorized transfer, false public announcement, or intentional infringement upon the licensor's rights gives the licensor the right to unilaterally terminate the partnership and pursue legal action for breach of contract. I paused for a beat, my gaze sweeping over their faces. The supplementary clause you sent me last night, if I don't sign it, is nothing but waste paper. If you dare present it to the investors, it's no different from document forgery and intentional fraud. Olivia's expression shifted slightly. Liam's face darkened. Are you threatening me? No. I put my phone away and stood up leisurely. I'm just reminding you. Don't be too greedy. Liam shot up from his chair, his voice turning ice cold. Chloe Morgan, what exactly do you want? I looked at him, and suddenly the man before me felt like a ridiculously unfamiliar stranger. It was the same face, but his eyes no longer held any of the sincerity of the young man who once stood in that tiny apartment, looking at me. All that was left was calculation, impatience, and an entitled sense of demand. What do I want? I smiled faintly, my voice calm and cold. I just want to take back what is mine. Don't forget, you are still a shareholder of Ethereum, and you are still my wife. If you blow this up, you won't benefit either. I won't benefit, but you'll benooze. I picked up my handbag and turned to leave. Liam Foster, didn't you always look down on me for not understanding capital? Today, I'll teach you the most basic lesson. I paused at the door and looked back at him. When your actions are this ugly, even capital finds it distasteful. The conference room door closed behind me. In the hallway, I ran right into the Dasho, head of legal from the investment firm, a Miss Davis, who was rushing to the realm signing. She was in her late 30s, known for her meticulous work. We had met at a product forum last year. She froze for a moment when she saw me. Miss Morgan. I nodded. Miss Davis, long time no see. Do you have a few minutes to talk? She was still hesitating when my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan. Asset preservation request has been filed. Business registration and cash flow chain for Apex Strategy Group are in. Olivia's mother's account received $900,000 yesterday, source of funds is Apex. I showed my phone directly to Miss Davis. Her expression immediately turned serious. Are these documents authentic? Before you sign the contract, all your firm has to do is run its own check. Won't that make it clear? I looked at her, my voice still calm. Also, the core technology license that Ethereum is using to back its current valuation, you'd best reevaluate that from scratch. Because before last night, no such thing as a perpetual, non-revocable license ever existed. Miss Davis's expression shifted rapidly. A few seconds later, she stepped aside, her voice dropping. Miss Morgan, this way to the small conference room, please. 10 minutes later, the signing, scheduled for 3 p.m., had yet to begin. Whispers started to ripple through the large conference room. For the first time, a visible crack appeared in Olivia's composure. She lowered her voice and asked, Liam, what's going on? Why isn't Miss Davis here yet? Liam frowned, and just as he was about to speak, his phone rang. It was the CFO. The moment he answered, his face paled, bit by bit, until it was as white as paper. Mr. Foster, we just received a notice from the court. A portion of the Taparis company's assets and your personal assets have been requested for preservation measures. Furthermore, Kiara Studios has sent a formal notice to terminate the release, extension and expansion of Ethereum's exclusive use rights for all core technology, and they are demanding the company immediately cease all external claims of holding a perpetual license. The air in the conference room instantly froze. Olivia shot up from her seat. Terminate the license? What do you mean, isn't the core technology always been the company's? The CFO's voice was audibly trembling. No, it's always been just a usage license. And the money transferred to Apex Strategy Group has been flagged by the due diligence team. They're demanding an immediate explanation of the transaction's background and all related parties. Liam gripped his phone, the veins on the back of his hand popping. Who tipped them off? I pushed the door open and stood at the entrance, my faint voice echoing through the room. I did. He whipped around, and for the first time, genuine panic appeared in his eyes. Chloe Morgan, are you insane? I looked at him and found it all incredibly amusing. I'm just no longer cleaning up your mess. Olivia's face was ashen, but she tried to put up a front. You're doing this out of malicious revenge. You know how important this signing is to Ethereum. Important? I laughed, my eyes turning cold. Then when you two were planning to siphon off $4 million, Why didn't you think about how important that was to Ethereum? Olivia's pupils contracted violently. I leisurely took out a pre-printed stack of bank statements and business information from my bag, placing it squarely on the table. Apex Strategy Group. Registered 15 days ago. Legal representative, Owen Reed, your cousin. In the last 24 hours, Ethereum has transferred $4 million into this company's account, of which $1.8 million was split into smaller amounts and moved into a reserve fund of an overseas account jointly controlled by you and your mother. I looked up, straight at Olivia, my tone calm but incredibly sharp. Olivia, you understand capital so well, don't you? So tell me, what kind of brand upgrade requires transfers like this? Her face was completely drained of color. Liam snatched the statements from the table, his tone chillingly harsh. Didn't you say this money was to open up media resources and overseas channels in advance? Olivia whipped her head around to look at him, a flicker of panic in her eyes, but she quickly tried to regain her composure. It is for networking, but this other party hasn't finalized things yet. I just had my family hold it for me. First. Hold it for you? I gently cut her off, a faint smile on my lips. The two of you, one uses my technology to prop up his valuation, the other uses company money to launder it for her relatives. Truly, a match made in heaven. Liam stared at me, each word seemingly ground out between his teeth. What do you want? It's simple. I replied leisurely. Divorce, asset division, pursuing copyright infringement, demanding an audit. We'll go through every necessary procedure. As I spoke, I placed a pre-prepared lawyer's notice in front of him. Oh, and by the way, that forged supplementary technology licensing agreement you had someone bring over last night. I've had a third party notarize and fix the one. Evidence. If you dare use it, I will consider filing a criminal complaint and add another charge to your name. He looked down at the lawyer's letter, his face slowly turning gray. Outside, people were starting to peek in. The signing still hadn't started. News spread like wildfire, and the entire floor felt like it was shrouded in the oppressive atmosphere before a major storm. Olivia finally lost her composure. She lowered her voice, speaking urgently to Liam. Tell her to withdraw the asset freeze first. We can explain the money later, but today's signing absolutely cannot fall through. Hearing this, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. Even at this point, the thing she cared about most was still that contract. Liam stared at me, his jaw clenched so tight, it looked like he might shatter his teeth. Chloe, I admit I handled this poorly. But do you have to destroy the entire company? Ethereum has your hard work in it, too. That's right. I nodded. It's precisely because my hard work is in it that I can't just stand by and watch you two destroy it. You're making the funding round collapse, and you call that not destroying it? I'm collapsing the funding round? I raised an eyebrow. The one who sold out core technology to please his lover was you. The one who transferred company money to her cousin was also you. If we have to call it what it is, this isn't destruction. It's digging your own grave. My voice wasn't loud, but each word fell in the conference room like the clear, terrifying strike of a hammer. Liam Foster, I used to think you had just fallen out of love. Today, I learned you're not just heartless, you're pathetically foolish. Do you really think Olivia came back for you? What she was aiming for was never you, but Ethereum's valuation and stock options. What she was looking at from the very beginning was just the assets in your hands that could be turned into cash. Olivia finally couldn't take it anymore, her voice breaking. You're talking nonsense. Am I? I turned to look at her, my gaze flat and cold. Then explain clearly. Why just 3 days after returning, you pushed Liam to put you on the stock option incentive list? Why the first thing you did wasn't to survey the business, but to push for the perpetual license and the division of marital assets? Why you were still forcing me to sign last night, and this morning you rushed to transfer $4 million out? Olivia's lips moved several times, but she couldn't utter a single word. Liam's face grew increasingly ugly. In the end, it was as if something in his mind began to crack. He whipped around to face Olivia, his voice sharp with anger. Didn't you say that money was just for short-term bridging capital? Didn't you say the cash flow would be returned by next week at the latest? Olivia immediately exploded. And what about you? Didn't you say Chloe Morgan? Was already pacified? That signing was just a formality? You don't even know what your own wife has in her hands, and now you're blaming me? The two of them finally tore off their masks right in front of me. Excellent. Truly excellent. There is perhaps nothing more satisfying in this world than to watch a pair who once conspired behind someone's back turn on each other, the tapper. Moment, their interests are threatened. Just then, the conference room door was pushed open again. Miss Davis walked in, accompanied by 2 legal staff and a risk control officer. Their faces were all solemn. Mr. Foster, I'm afraid today's signing will have to be temporarily postponed. Liam shot up. Miss Davis, this is a misunderstanding. We can explain. An explanation can certainly be given. Miss Davis placed a list on the table, her voice calm but firm, but not at this moment. She looked him straight in the eye, reading out each point clearly. First, there is a serious uncertainty. Risk regarding the ownership of your company's core technology. Second, there are undisclosed irregular transactions with a related party. Third, the marital assets and conflicts of interest of the management have the potential to directly affect the stability of the company's control. Fourth, there are currently signs of suspicion regarding the forgery of a supplementary licensing document. She closed her folder, concluding succinctly, based on these circumstances, our firm has officially initiated an internal risk escalation process. Whether we continue this partnership will require a comprehensive reevaluation. The words had barely left her mouth when the color drained from Liam's face. Olivia couldn't even sit straight. Wasn't the thing she valued most the funding agreement they were supposed to sign today? Now, it had all turned to smoke. I stood to the side, quietly watching the scene unfold. The suffocating resentment that had been building in my chest for so long finally began to dissipate, bit by bit. But this wasn't enough. It wasn't nearly enough. I have never been the type to take a slap and just silently stare back. They wanted to drag me down, to force me to lose to the memory of someone else's old flame. So, I would let them understand exactly how high the price is for choosing the wrong opponent. The signing fell apart, and the news sent shockwaves through Ethereum. In less than 2 hours, it had spread throughout the industry. Ethereum's final funding round was suspended. The reason? A dispute over the ownership of its core technology and serious concerns about its leadership's risky transactions with Cravend related parties. By 6 p.m., though the mainstream media had yet to report, industry chat groups were already buzzing. Liam called me 18 times. I didn't answer a single one. Finally, he sent a text. Chloe Morgan, come back and talk. Name your terms. I glanced at it and blocked his number. Ethan Cole sat across from me, lifting his coffee cup and raising an eyebrow. Really not going to answer? No. I leaned back in my chair, my voice faint. His favorite tactic has always been to push things to a point of no return, then turn around and pretend he's still leaving room for negotiation. Now, it's my turn to use that tactic on him. Ethan smiled faintly. All right, let's talk business. He set his coffee down and pushed a file toward me. The asset freeze was approved quickly. Marital assets, the stock shares in Liam's name, that high-rise condo, and several sums of money that can be proven to be dubiously linked to Olivia are all temporarily frozen. We've secured basically everything you wanted to keep. I nodded. What about the copyright infringement and document forgery? The evidence is solid, the report has been filed, Ethan replied leisurely. But if you want to drag this out and let them expose more of their own weaknesses, I suggest we let them flounder for a while. People tend to make more mistakes when they panic. I was silent for a few seconds, then suddenly asked him, do I look ridiculous? Ethan looked at me. Why would you think that? 7 years. I lowered my eyes, my voice very soft. I was with him for 7 years, and only now do I see him clearly. He didn't answer right away, just quietly pushed a neatly arranged timeline toward me. Seeing a person clearly is never about you being foolish. His voice was calm, but every word was firm. It's just that the other person acted for too long. Don't take someone else's filth and make it your own fault. Too long. I lowered my head and opened the timeline. The first page was a dense history of times contact between Olivia and Liam after her return. Airport pickups, private dinners, hotels, late-night car rides, jewelry receipts, private club access, cards, and even the sudden appearance of that $900,000 in her mother's account. Everything I had once refused to believe or deliberately ignored was now laid out in black and white. It turned out I hadn't been overthinking. I had been thinking too little. 5 days ago, I was in the kitchen making soup for Liam, worried that his late nights were bad for his stomach. 3 days ago, I was still revising his presentation on product safety logic, the part the investors valued most. And during that same time, he bought Olivia a necklace worth $250,000. The payment was made from the company's commercial reserve fund. I stared at that transaction history, and suddenly let out a very soft laugh. Ethan looked at me, his gaze lingering for a moment. "Are you okay?" "Very okay." I closed the file and looked up at him. People always used to tell me that a mature woman should be more forgiving with men, not so calculating. But now I understand, you have to calculate everything clearly. Because if you don't, someone will take your kindness as capital, and your silence as consent. Well said. Ethan nodded, then asked, "So, what's your next move?" "The next move?" I picked up my phone and opened my email, my voice so calm it was almost without a ripple. "Is to make him understand why Etherian is named Etherian." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean? The company wasn't originally called that." I looked at the old company registration form on the screen and spoke slowly. "At the very beginning, it was called Kiara, after my middle name. Later, Liam said that for external branding, we needed a sharper, stronger, more masculine name. I listened and changed it." I paused. I could yield the brand to him. I could let him stand center stage. But perhaps he's forgotten, the person who wrote the first business plan was me. The person who typed the first lines of code was also me. I looked up, my voice still calm. "Now, it's time to take back what belongs to me." The next morning, Liam finally managed to intercept me. He was waiting in front of my mother's nursing home. After just one night, he looked haggard, with a birding the stubble-covered chin that made him look several years older. The moment I got out of the car, he strode over, reaching out to grab me. I sidestepped him. "If you have something to say, say it. Don't touch me." His hand froze in midair, his voice hoarse. "Chloe, do we really have to go this far? Weren't you the one who brought things to this point?" I looked at him, my gaze indifferent. "From the moment you welcomed your old flame back, gave her my stock options, forced me to sign, and transferred company money out, didn't you? Push everything to where it is today?" He closed his eyes, as if trying to suppress his anger. "I can explain the nation. Money, and things with Olivia aren't as complicated as you think. She really wanted to help the company. Enough." I cut him off. "Do you even believe those words yourself? I know I've wronged you." His voice dropped, revealing a rare trace of exhaustion. "But you can't force feelings. I admit I fell out of love, but I never wanted to push you to this point. Now you've ruined the funding round, broken the company's cash flow. What are the hundreds of employees supposed to do? Even if you hate me, you shouldn't take it out on the company." There it was again. Every time he did something wrong, he always managed to shift the blame to me. In the past, I would have been led by him, would have softened, would have wondered if I was really hurting too many people. But not anymore. "Liam Foster, don't use the employees to guilt-trip me." I looked at him, my voice so cold it had no warmth left. "The one who truly pushed them to the edge. I was you. You gambled the company to please Olivia, transferred money without authorization, made false public statements, and wanted to take both the technology and the assets. Now that things have gone wrong, you suddenly remember the employees?" His face grew uglier. "So what exactly do you want? Do you really want to see Etherian collapse?" "Etherian won't collapse." I let out a very soft laugh, but there was no mirth in my eyes. "The only ones who have to pay the price are the two of you." Liam stared at me, and his gaze slowly changed. Perhaps only at this moment did he truly realize something. I was no longer just angry. I was genuinely determined to see this through to the end. "Chloe," his voice dropped, "don't push me." I almost laughed out loud. "How else can you push me?" I looked at him, each word casual but sharp. "Throw another divorce agreement at me? Or continue to let Olivia come to me and threaten me with my mother?" His brow twitched violently. Did she go to see your mother? She didn't have the guts for that, I said, looking at him coldly. But I have. A clear recording of every word she said at my front door. Would you like to hear it? Liam's face instantly turned ashen. A few seconds later, he ground out, You weren't like this before. That's right. I nodded, my tone strangely calm. Before, I still loved you. The words hit him like a physical blow, freezing him in place. I looked at him and realized that the last bit of bitterness in my heart had almost completely faded. So time and time again, you told me to back down, and I did. You told me to endure, and I did. You said we couldn't have family drama before the IPO, so I swallowed all my grievances. You said Olivia was just a business partner, and even when I saw you two in a car together late at night, I forced myself to pretend I didn't see. I looked him straight in the eye, my voice still very soft, but sharper than any accusation. Liam Foster, I gave you too many chances. You were the one who didn't want them. I took a step closer, the distance between us now just a breath away, yet so far. We could never go back. Now, I don't love you anymore. I looked straight into his eyes. So what do you have left to push me with? With that, I walked past him and into the nursing home. For a long time, there were no footsteps behind me. I didn't look back. In her room, my mother was reading by the window. She had undergone 2 major surgeries and her health was never truly good, but her mind was sharper and clearer than anyone's. The moment I sat down, she glanced at me, her tone as casual as if she were asking about the weather. Arguing with Liam at the door. Again? Ihamida soft yes. She closed her book, sighed, and said directly, divorce him. I was stunned. Mom, you knew all along? It's not that I knew. She looked at me, a hint of heartache in her eyes. It's that you've been enduring it so obviously. You've been like this since you were a child. You never speak of your grievances, always afraid of worrying others. But in a marriage, you can endure once and have peace for a while, but you can't endure for a lifetime. His heart isn't here anymore. Holding on will only suffocate you. My nose is stung. She gently patted my hand, her voice slow but firm. I don't have any great wisdom in life, but I can give you one piece of advice. First and foremost, don't lose yourself. If you truly still love him, then don't seek revenge, make a clean break. But if you don't love him anymore, then settle every debt that needs to be settled. Don't leave a single penny behind. I lowered my head and laughed. Don't worry, Mom. Your daughter is very good at calculating now. She laughed too. That's good. Leaving the nursing home, my mind was completely clear. At 3 p.m., Aetherian held an emergency internal meeting. Liam was still trying to stabilize morale. To the public, he claimed the funding process was just a fractive data routine adjustment. Internally, he acted as if everything was business as usual. Unfortunately, he no longer had the ability to keep things as they were. Because I had arrived. Not just me. I brought Ethan Cole, 2 other lawyers, and a formal notice from Chiara Studios. In the boardroom, the atmosphere was as still as water before a storm. The entire executive team was present. Even the department heads who usually loved to take sides didn't dare to speak. Olivia sat next to Liam, her face pale, but still trying to maintain the demeanor of a vice president. I stood in front of the projection screen and opened the first slide. The title was a single line. Clarification on management, related transaction risks and core technology. Licensing of Aetherian tech. A low murmur rippled through the room. Liam tried to suppress his anger, his voice low. Chloe Morgan, this is not the place for you to cause trouble. I know, I smiled faintly. That's why I'm here today to talk about evidence, not feelings. The first page was the initial licensing agreement between Chiara Studios and Aetherian. The second was the certificate of ownership for all core patents and software copyrights. The third was the irregular payments from Aetherian to Apex Strategy Group and related accounts over the past 3 months. The fourth was the chain of relationships between Olivia and the companies controlled by her relatives. The fifth was the electronic seal usage history on the forged supplementary licensing agreement. I went through them page by page. In the boardroom, the air was so still that even breathing seemed to be hushed. Some people started sweating. Some stole Glances at Olivia. Others turned to look at Liam, as if only now understanding that this was no longer a marital dispute, but that the company was truly on the verge of a seismic event. When I reached the last page, I paused for 2 seconds and then read each word clearly. As of today, Kiera Studios officially terminates Ethereum Tech's exclusive extended use rights for the 3 core algorithm models, Kiera 1, Aegis, and Nightwatch. We reserve all rights to pursue legal action for any unauthorized use, false external announcements, and any infringement upon the legal rights and interests of the licensor. Silence. Absolute silence. Finally, Liam couldn't hold back anymore. He shot up and slammed his hand on the sand table. Chloe Morgan, do you know what you're doing? Of course I do. I looked at him, my voice calm and cold. I'm cutting my losses. You're trying to kill the company. The one pushing the company to this point is you, not me. Olivia couldn't sit still any longer either. She stood up abruptly. Doing this won't benefit anyone. Once the technology license is terminated, the entire product line will be halted. Customers, distribution channels, orders, everything. We'll have problems. You'll be the one to suffer, too. So what? I turned to look at her, my gaze placid and sharp. So I should just continue to watch you two take my money, my man, and my technology, and then expect me to clean up the mess? Olivia's face turned green. I shifted my gaze to the senior executives below, my voice not loud, but so steady that no one in the room dared to dismiss it. I didn't come here today to make a scene. I just want to make 2 things clear. First, Ethereum's core technology has never belonged solely to Liam Foster, and it certainly wasn't built on a few connections Olivia brought back. Second, the people who truly want to save Ethereum right now won't continue to cover up the rot for anyone. They will cooperate with legal and audit to cut out the tumor and stop the bleeding. Finally, someone from below spoke up, their voice hoarse. Miss Morgan, what? About the products? The customers? I looked at the person who had spoken, the head of supply chain, who had been with me for years. The technology won't stop, I said clearly. But the prerequisite is that Ethereum's control and cash flow must return to normal. Whoever caused the problem leaves. Whoever dirtied the company pays the price. The moment the words left my mouth, everyone understood. I wasn't here to destroy Ethereum. I was here to give it a transfusion. Half an hour after the meeting ended, Henry Shaw placed his resignation letter on Liam's desk. Soon after, the R&D team too, the product center group, and then the supply chain risk control department. More than a dozen people submitted requests to temporarily stop reporting directly to Olivia. Later, a few longtime employees who had been on the fence started to quietly approach me. It wasn't that their conscience had suddenly awakened. It was that they finally saw clearly who could actually keep the company alive. Liam panicked. He was always good at controlling situations, but once a situation spiraled out of his control, he was the one who feared it most. At 8 p.m. that night, he asked to meet me. The location he chose was the small diner we used to frequent during our early startup days. The irony was that the Nest 11 diner had been renovated 3 times, yet he seemed to think that just by choosing the right place, I would soften because of old memories. When I arrived, he was already sitting at the back table. In front of him were 2 glasses of water and a plate of sweet and sour pork, my old favorite. I stood by the table, with no intention of sitting down. What's the point of this? Liam looked up at me, his eyes surprisingly red. Chloe, can't we just sit down and have a proper talk? Aren't we talking right now? You know that's not what I mean. His voice was noticeably hoarse. I admit I was wrong. But you can't just destroy all my options with one blow. I can handle Olivia. I can take back the stock options, and I can have her resign from the VP position. You restore the license so the funding can continue, and we can discuss everything else. Can't we? I looked at him and found this version of him so foreign. The man who had been so arrogant was now, for a moment, bowing his head. It was a pity it was too late. You think you can just handle it? I pulled out a chair and sat down, my faint gaze on him. Liam Foster, do you know what's most ridiculous about you? Even now, you still think the problem is just Olivia. He pursed his lips, silent. But the problem was never her. I looked at him, slowly articulating each word. It was you. You were the one who broke the promise first. You were the one who schemed against our marriage first. You were the one who took my things to appease someone else first. And you were the one who touched money you shouldn't have touched first. Olivia was just a mirror that helped me see you more clearly. His hand clenched into a fist, the veins on the back of it popping. Then what? Do you want me to do? Divorce? Audit? Step down? I looked him straight in the eye. And that's the lenient option. You want me to hand Ethereum over to you? Not hand over to me, I corrected calmly. Return. He suddenly laughed, a bitter, ugly laugh. Chloe Morgan, you've really become so cruel. I lowered my eyes to the glass of water on the table, my voice slow and cold. No. I've just finally learned that when dealing with someone who has betrayed you shouldn't be too kind. Liam was silent for a long time, then he suddenly asked. Did you know from the Coppice teen start that Olivia didn't come back for me? I knew half of it, I replied. The way she looked at you on her first day back wasn't the look of someone seeing the person they love. It was like she was looking at a project. It's a pity you believed her, but never me. Then why didn't you tell me sooner? I looked up, straight into his eyes. Because the truth was never what you wanted to hear. That dinner ended unhappily. Liam didn't get what he wanted, and I didn't leave him with any illusions. 3 days later, the first preliminary audit report arrived. The results were even uglier than I had imagined. Besides Apex Strategy Group, the so-called overseas brand upgrade project, led by Olivia, had at least 4 other payments, with clear signs of benefit transfers. And in 2 of the guarantee documents, approved by Liam himself, there was even an act of intentionally using marital assets to provide a reverse guarantee for an undisclosed related company. What was even more disgusting was that on one of those guarantees, the signatory was me. The signature was forged almost perfectly. But it wasn't my signature. Ethan held the file, his face turning cold. Chloe Morgan, this is no longer just a relationship dispute. I know. Then report it to the police. I stared at the fake signature, my fingertips clenching tighter and tighter. To say I wasn't sad would be a lie. Liam and I had been together for too many years. During the poorest days, we shared a single bowl of noodles. During the hardest times, we shared a single down jacket, huddled together on the last subway of the day. I used to think that at worst, he had just fallen out of DOS love. But only today did I understand that once a person's heart rots, they can truly scheme against you down to your very bones. Report it. I pushed the file back to Ethan, my voice turning cold. Don't miss a single person. The day the news broke, Olivia finally couldn't sit still. She dropped the act and rushed to block me downstairs at the company. I had just come out of Chiara Studios, preparing to go to a meeting with a new group of investors. Olivia, in her high heels, rushed over and blocked my path, her eyes bloodshot. Chloe Morgan, do you really have to be so ruthless? I glanced at her, my steps not faltering. Move. Do you think you've won? Her voice was audibly trembling. Liam won't listen to anything anymore. The company's stock forecast has plummeted, the house is frozen, and my parents can't even withdraw their money. Are you only satisfied when everyone is ruined? Only then did I truly stop and turn to look at her. Your words are really amusing. I smiled, but there was no mirth in my eyes. You were the ones who transferred the money. You were the ones who bought the house. Now that you can't get it out, you're blaming me for pushing you to this point? Olivia stared at me, her teeth almost clenched. What are you pretending to be so noble for? Aren't you just unwilling to lose to me? Hearing this, I actually found it funny. Lose to you? I looked at her, my voice faint. Olivia, you've made a mistake. Her face grew even paler. I walked toward her step by step, lowered my voice, each word as sharp as a thin blade. If I truly saw Liam Foster as a treasure, I wouldn't have waited until today to make my move. What I was unwilling to accept was never losing to you. What I was unwilling to accept was that the things I worked so hard to build were being trampled on by 2 people with no self-respect. She stared at me, her eyes a mix of anger and panic. I continued, my voice calm and cold. And don't flatter yourself. You didn't win against anyone. You just happened to show up on the day I decided to take out the trash. Her face instantly became extremely ugly. I walked past her, and after a few steps, I stopped and turned back to add, "Oh, right. Didn't you always think you understood capital better than me? Then you should understand a very simple principle. Stock options that haven't been cashed out are, in the end, just paper. Money that isn't truly in your hands can disappear at any time. You thought you were coming back to pick the sweet fruit, but in reality, you just accidentally stepped on a landmine." With that, I got into my car. In the rearview mirror, Olivia stood frozen in place, her face as white as a sheet of paper. In that moment, I suddenly felt a great weight lift from my heart. Not because I had won a war of words, but because I finally no longer needed anyone's approval to prove whether I was worthy of being chosen. I used to always wonder why Liam Foster had changed. It was only much later that I understood. He hadn't suddenly changed. He had always been this way. It was just that before, he hadn't had the opportunity to reveal it so thoroughly. When a man is poor, love can sometimes be enough to cover his ambition. But once he has money, the greed, vanity, and arrogance hidden in his bones will surface, one by one. And Olivia was never some noble one that got away. She was just better at packaging herself than the average homewrecker. She turned benefits into love, and appropriation into destiny. She looked down on Liam when he had nothing, but she aimed very precisely at him when he had value. In hindsight, it was fair. Like always attracts like. A week later, everything completely exploded. To patch the cash flow gap, Liam had secretly contacted some secondary channels, trying to sell off technology partnership plans that hadn't even completed the rights confirmation process. To be clear, with incomplete ownership, he was trying to pre-sell the product and its story. This time, the problem was no longer just risk control. It was a real threat of commercial fraud. The investors immediately issued a statement, completely terminating the partnership. The bank followed suit and revoked their credit line. Aetherian, on the surface, hadn't even gone public, but the advance payments from distribution channels, equipment costs, and brand promotion expenses from the initial phase were all tied up. The moment the cash flow broke, the avalanche effect was faster than anyone could have imagined. Liam started scrambling everywhere for money. Olivia's family initially played dead, then quickly turned on him. I heard that when her parents found out their accounts were frozen, they immediately forced her to sever ties with Liam. Even the hotel they had booked for their engagement party was cancelled. It was only then that Liam finally saw clearly that Olivia had never come back to endure hardship with him. She had come back to get her share. And once that share was gone, she retreated faster than anyone. The most spectacular part of this drama was the emergency board meeting held half a month later. That day, I formally submitted 2 motions. First, to revoke all of Olivia's positions and stock options. Second, to initiate a process to hold Liam Foster accountable for his mismanagement, and to request his resignation as CEO, to cooperate with the legal and audit teams. In the boardroom, the air was suffocatingly quiet. The smaller shareholders looked at each other, no one daring to speak first. Liam sat at the head of the proscent table, his eyes bloodshot, looking at me like I was a stranger. "Chloe Morgan, do you really have to be so heartless?" I looked at him calmly. "I gave you dignity more than once. You were the one who didn't want it. Do you think pushing me out of Aetherian will really make the company better? Whether it gets better or not, we have to cut out the tumor first." The moment the words left my mouth, someone in the room almost choked. Liam's face went from green to white. After a moment, he laughed coldly. "Fine. So you all think every mistake was mine, right? But don't forget, Aetherian wouldn't be where it is today without my contributions." I nodded. "It wouldn't." He was stunned. I looked him straight in the eye and continued. "So I never intended to deny your contributions. I just want to hold you accountable for your faults. Merits are merits, and faults are faults. The money you earned, the reputation you gained, the spotlight you stood under, no one is going to erase that for you. But the dirty things you got your hands into, don't expect them to be treated as if they never happened." He stared at me, and after a long time, he asked, "Were you just waiting all along to see me fall?" "No," I replied almost instantly. "Before, the person who wanted you not to fall, more than anyone, was me. Because I had invested too many years, too much effort, and too much trust in you. I wanted you to stand firm more than anyone. But you were the one who walked step by step toward the cliff's edge, and you even wanted to pull me down with you. I paused, my voice growing colder. So, I had no choice but to let go. That day, the board voted in favor. Liam was suspended, and Olivia was officially dismissed. After the meeting, everyone left quickly. In the vast boardroom, only Liam and I remained. It was getting dark, and outside the window, the city lights were coming on, one by one. He looked at me for a long time before speaking, his voice hoarse. Chloe, have we really come to this? I closed my portfolio without looking at him. Not we. You. What if I said I regret it? That sentence made my hand pause for a fraction of a second. I finally turned to look at him. His eye nodded, and he exuded an air of exhausted struggle, as if all his strength had been drained. If this were before, I might have felt sorry for him. But now, all I felt was one word. Late. Too late for anything to be saved. Regret what? I asked him, my voice calm. Regret not tricking me into signing sooner, or regret not managing to transfer all that money out sooner? His face instantly turned pale. Do you have to talk to me like that? Then how do you want me to talk? I raised my lips in a thin, cold smile. Say. It's okay, everyone makes a mistake and loves the wrong person in their youth. Or wish you, and, the one that got away 100 years of happiness? His lips moved, but he couldn't form a single word. I stood up and picked up my bag. As I reached the door, I heard his voice from behind, calling, Chloe Morgan. I turned back. He looked at me, his eyes incredibly complex, filled with unwillingness, pity, and a sliver of late-coming realization. Did you ever truly see Etherean as ours? I looked at him for a few seconds and then suddenly laughed. I once saw even you as mine, let alone Etherean. I paused, my gaze calm and cold. It's just a pity that later I discovered you weren't, and Etherean shouldn't continue to be tied to you. The moment the door closed behind me, I heard a soft thud from inside, as if something had been accidentally knocked over. But I didn't turn back. 2 months later, the preliminary hearing began. Divorce, asset division, copyright infringement, unfair competition, and joint liability for the forged signature. Everything was laid bare. Liam hired the best lawyer. So did Olivia. But the evidence I had was too complete, so complete that they could barely even say the word misunderstanding. Especially that guarantee with the forged signature and the trail of money funneled from Apex Strategy Group. It sealed off their last escape route. After the hearing ended, there were no reporters, but the hallway was filled with familiar faces from the industry. When I walked out, Olivia was leaning against the wall on the phone, her voice trembling. I could only make out a few fragmented words like house. Frozen. I'm out of options. Seeing me, she immediately hung up. For the first time, there was no trace of arrogance in her eyes, only resentment and a poorly hidden fear. Are you satisfied now? I looked at her, my voice calm. More or less. Olivia gritted her teeth. Chloe Morgan, don't be too smug. Do you think you can really handle Etherean without Liam? Who told you I have to handle Etherean? She was stunned. I smiled faintly. What I wanted from the very beginning was never to clean up a mess for you two. I just wanted to take back what was mine, cleanly and clearly. With that, I walked straight past her. From behind, she suddenly shouted my name. Don't you hate me at all? My steps paused. I used to. I didn't turn back, just replied faintly. But not anymore. Because I realized that spending time hating something so cheap is truly a waste. That afternoon, Kiara Studios officially announced the completion of a new funding round. The lead investor was none other than the firm that Etherean had previously stood up. The moment the news broke, the industry was abuzz once more. It turned out they hadn't rejected Etherean because they didn't see its potential, but because they didn't want people like Liam Foster and Olivia Reed. And I, with the original core team and full ownership of the complete technology roadmap, was building a new empire. The new company was named Praxis. The meaning was simple. What had deviated from order would eventually return to its proper course. At the press conference, I wore a simple white shirt and black trousers. There were no sob stories, no using the tale of betrayal to paint a more dramatic picture. I only said one thing at the end. A good product is never built on beautiful stories, nor can it be built on coercion or guilt-tripping. What makes? It has always been people, respect, and principles. There was a 2-second silence, followed by a tide of applause. I knew in that moment, many people weren't just looking at the product, they were looking at me. They wanted to see how a woman who was betrayed by her husband, schemed against by an old flame, and pushed out of the company she co-founded, managed to get back up. But only I knew, I didn't get back up. I just finally stopped kneeling. Much later, Liam came to see me once. By then, the divorce was final. The marital assets were divided according to the law. Because of his actions of concealing and transferring assets, along with a series of other violations, he bore the heaviest consequences. The house he had planned to move into with Olivia was foreclosed. His cars were sold to cover the losses. He couldn't even keep the watch he once loved most. Olivia's fate was even worse. Her stock options were reduced to zero. The legal troubles from the related party transactions were not over. Her family refused to help, and even the last bit of face she had in the high society circle she valued so much was all but gone. I heard that at one point, the two of them argued to the point of tearing each's other apart, one blaming the other for only caring about money, the other cursing the first for being incompetent and relying on women to climb. Truly, a perfect match. That night, Liam stood downstairs at Praxis. It was a bit cold. He wore a dark jacket and looked much thinner. When he saw me come out, he reflexively took 2 steps forward, then stopped. Chloe. I hummed a soft showing no emotion. He looked at me, his Adam's apple bobbing. After a long time, he said, "You seem to be doing well now. Thanks to you, not too bad." He gave a bitter smile. "I always used to think that you couldn't live without me. Later, I realized that without me, you live even better." "Congratulations," I said, my voice calm. "You finally faced the truth." He was silent for a long time, then suddenly asked, "Have you ever, for even a moment, thought about forgiving me?" I looked at him, and my mind flashed back to a winter many years ago. We were crammed into a basement office. I was coding until my eyes blurred, and he was resting his chin on his hand, watching me. He said that when he had money, he would buy me the biggest house, the most beautiful ring, so I would never have to stay up late again. When he said those words, he was sincere. At least in that moment. But the most terrifying thing about people is never that they lied to you from the start, but that in the end, they used the sincerity they once had as a false alibi for themselves. I pulled my thoughts back and looked him straight in the eye. "Liam Foster, whether I forgive you or not, is no longer important." His gaze flickered. I continued, each word clear. "Because you are no longer worthy." That sentence pierced him. The color drained from his face, bit by bit. After a long time, he asked again, his voice so small it almost disappeared in the wind. "Then, do you have any regrets?" "Regret what?" "Regretting meeting me. Regretting being with me all those years." I was silent for a few seconds. The wind blew from the intersection, carrying the early winter chill. "Meeting you, I don't regret," I said slowly. "Because in those years of striving forward, the person I was real. Being with you, I don't regret either, because all the seriousness and devotion I gave was worthy of who I was at that time." I paused, looked at him, and emphasized each word. "I only regret one thing, waking up too late." He was completely speechless. I left him no room for retreat. Before getting into my car, I remembered something and turned back to look at him. "Oh, right. You always used to like saying I was reasonable." He was stunned. I smiled faintly. "Now, I'm returning those words to you. In the future, if you like someone, remember to be a little wiser. Don't always wait for others to clean up your messes. Not everyone is like me, willing to go with you from nothing to glory. And not everyone is like me, who, when you had rotted to the fosta core, only took back what was rightfully hers." With that, I opened the car door and got in. As the window slowly rolled up, I could still see him standing frozen in place. The streetlight cast his long shadow on the ground, looking very much like the arrogant young man from years ago, standing in front of the school gate, so poor all he had left was his pride. It was a pity that this time, no one would feel sorry for him, and no one would be there to back him up. The car had driven some distance when my phone vibrated. It was a text from Ethan. Finished talking? I replied. Yep. He texted back quickly. Did you soften up? I looked at the screen and couldn't help but laugh. 2 seconds later, I typed another sentence. I just suddenly realized that when I was in love, I was truly valuable. Ethan replied almost instantly. And when you're not in love? I leaned back against the seat, watching the neon lights recede outside the Citara's window. My fingertips hovered over the screen for a moment before I finally typed back, when I'm not in love, I'm priceless. The moment I sent that message, I laughed. It turned out that when a person truly lets go of a rotten relationship, even breathing becomes so much lighter. Later, Praxis became more and more stable. Not the kind of overnight explosion, but the steady progress of taking one step at a time, slow, but sure. The product was launched, the distribution channels were reorganized, old customers were gradually brought back, and the new team worked together more and more smoothly. And I, little by little, found the life that had always been interrupted, always sacrificed. On weekends, I would go to the farmer's market with my mother, sit down for a proper hot meal, and sleep until I woke up naturally, no more 3 a.m. staring at someone else's messy reports just to fix a plan. Occasionally, people would mention Liam Foster and Olivia Reed. They said Liam was now scrambling for projects. But his reputation was ruined, and no one dared to really trust him. They said Olivia had moved to another state, wanting a change of environment to start over, but it was a pity that some things, once they happen, are not so easily shaken off. They also said that the money, the glamour, and all the things they had once valued most, had fought so hard to grasp, they couldn't hold on to in the end. I just smiled faintly when I heard it. Was I satisfied? Of course. But what truly made me feel satisfied was never seeing them fall. It was finally understanding one thing. A woman's most vicious revenge is never about fighting for a man with someone else. It's when he sees you as his backup, his stepping stone, the one who will never leave, and you turn your back and walk away for him to see. Walking so far that even if he looks up, he can no longer reach you. Half a year later, at an industry summit, I ran into Olivia Reed. She had lost a reedy lot of weight, her makeup was sharper, and her smile was noticeably fainter. When she saw me from a distance, she clearly froze. I had intended to just walk past, but she spoke up first. Chloe Morgan. I stopped. She looked at me, silent for a few seconds, then suddenly asked, "Do you still find me utterly ridiculous?" "It's better now," I replied faintly. "But before, it was quite amusing." She smirked. "You're not even angry this time." "I used to think that with love and benefits, a smart person could have both," she said. Later, I learned that those who are too greedy end up with nothing. Hearing those words from her mouth was quite novel. I looked at her for 2 seconds and said calmly, "You didn't lose because you were greedy. You lost because you thought everyone else was dumber than you." Olivia lowered her head and gave a faint, bitter laugh. "That's true." She paused, then asked me again, "If I had never come back, would you and Liam Foster have ended up like this?" I looked at the crowd in the hall, my voice still even. "We would have." She was stunned. "Because the problem was never whether you came back or not," I said. "The problem was that he had started to take my sacrifices for granted. My compromises for granted, and the fact that I would never leave for granted. Your return just made everything explode sooner." Olivia was silent for a long time before she finally said softly, "So you saw through everything more than I did." "It's not that I saw through it more than you." I looked at her, my voice calm but firm. "It's that I dared to play, and I dared to lose." Olivia looked up at me, a dazed moment in her eyes. I said nothing more and turned to leave. In this world, not everyone is worth holding a grudge against, and not every opponent is worth remembering for a lifetime. Some people are just a puddle of dirty water you accidentally step in. You clean your shoes and move on. That's enough. On the last night of the summit, Praxis won a very important contract. At the celebration party, everyone was noisy and insisted I say a few words. I raised my glass, looking at the young, excited, bright faces before me, and suddenly remembered a night 1 year ago. It was also wine, also applause, also in front of many people. The only difference was that on that day, I was treated like a joke. Today, I was not. I smiled and raised my glass a little higher. Thank you, everyone. And thank you to the terrible times in the past. Someone from below immediately laughed and asked, Miss Morgan, we have to thank that too? Of course, we have to. I looked at them, a slight curve on my lips. Because sometimes, if a person isn't pushed to the absolute limit, they'll never know how well they can actually fight. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. As the wine slid down my throat, the slight burn traveled down my chest, but it wasn't unpleasant. On the contrary, it was incredibly refreshing. I suddenly realized that everything that should have ended had finally ended. Everything that should have been taken back, I had taken back. As for Liam Foster and Olivia Reed, what their lives would be like, whether they were well, whether they truly regretted it, it all had nothing to do with me anymore. I wasn't the one who won against the one that got away. I was just the one who finally won myself back. When the party was over, Ethan Cole walked out with me. The night wind blew, and he took off his suit jacket and draped it over my shoulders, tilting his head to look at me. You're in a really good mood today. Very good. Then can I formally apply for a position? He looked at me, his tone half joking, half serious. Upgrade from long-term legal counsel to a probationary candidate for your future life. I tilted my head to look at him and couldn't help but laugh. Mr. Cole, are you taking advantage of someone who just escaped a disaster to cut in line? No. He looked at me very seriously. I've been in line for a very long time. It's finally my turn. I looked at him without answering immediately. Just then, my phone vibrated. It was a notification that the partnership had been officially confirmed in the partnership work group. I glanced at it, put my phone away, and suddenly felt that the night wind was very pleasant. So I looked up at him and said slowly, then you can keep waiting in line. Ethan raised an eyebrow. Meaning, there's still hope? Depends on your performance. He let out a low laugh. All right. The elevator door opened automatically. Before stepping in, I suddenly looked back at the city nightscape outside the floor-to-ceiling window. The lights were brilliant, the traffic endless. When someone leaves, the earth keeps spinning. But there are some people who, only when they step out of your life, do you realize it wasn't a loss, but that life was finally making room for better things to enter. Before the elevator doors closed, Ethan suddenly asked me one last question. Tell me, if Liam Foster were standing in front of you right now and asked who he lost to in this game, what would you say? I watched the doors slowly close and couldn't help but smile. He didn't lose to his old flame. I paused for a beat and continued, and he didn't lose to me. He lost to his own heart. Wanting love, but unwilling to let go of greed. The elevator doors closed completely. In the reflection, my face was clear, calm, and relaxed, my eyes full of light. I suddenly felt that this was very good. I had loved, made mistakes, awakened, and also won myself back. In the future, if anyone asks me how to make me lose to the one that got away, I'll probably just say one thing. In your dreams. When I was in love, I built a stage for him to sing on. When love was over, I tore the whole stage down. If that counterattack was satisfying enough, the next story will be even more intense, because this time, the one making the move leaves her opponent with no way out. She's here, she's here. The bride has finally arrived. As I stepped out of the car, the hotel entrance was already swarmed with reporters. Camera flashes went off relentlessly, and questions were fired at me. Miss Price, it's your wedding day. How are you feeling right now? Miss Price, regarding the wedding of the century that Mr. Vance has painstakingly prepared, do you have anything to say? I didn't answer. Flanked by security, I walked calmly into the venue. The wedding was held at St. Michael's Cathedral on the east side. Julian Vance, in a white groom's suit, stood on the high steps, the smile on his lips holding easy confidence of someone who believes everything is under his control. Just this morning, he had called me and casually mentioned that he'd had a long night and needed to catch up on sleep, so he couldn't come pick me up, his bride. He was certain that no matter what, I would still show up. Brandon Croft, Julian Vance's closest friend, was the first to let out a mocking whistle. She actually came. He nudged Julian with his elbow, a smug grin on His face. Still our man Julian who knows what he's doing. A night of fun before the wedding, and the bride still has to obediently show up in her wedding dress. What do you call that? Well trained. Another guy, Kevin Ross, immediately chimed in. You bet. The kind of workout from last night would have left anyone else a mess. But our Julian is still standing here as the groom. You have to be impressed. The group burst into laughter. Julian's lips curled slightly, his tone so casual. It was infuriating. Catherine Price has been with me for 10 years. If she doesn't marry me, who else would have her? He glanced down at the engagement ring I had taken off last night, his voice even more certain. A little tantrum is normal, but in the end. He paused for half a beat, then slowly concluded. She'll still walk up to me and obediently give me her hand. Brandon immediately gave him a thumbs up in admiration. Just then, the car door opened. I stepped out in a pristine white wedding dress. The sunlight hit the thin veil, reflecting into tiny, crystal-like specks of textured light. A flash of stunned admiration appeared in Julian's eyes. He blurted out, as if it were a rare, sincere compliment. My wife looks beautiful in a wedding dress. But before his hand could touch me, his phone rang. Seeing the caller ID, the corners of his lips immediately curled up. He stepped back to take the call, his voice softening noticeably. What's wrong? Didn't I say I'd call later? From the other end came a soft, cloying voice. Julian, I have to fly overseas this afternoon, so I made an appointment at the city clerk's office in 10 minutes. Can you spare some time to come? I want to have the marriage license before I go. 10 minutes? Julian let out a low laugh. In such a hurry? After hanging up, Brandon immediately sidled over. Who was that? Vivian. Julian put his phone in his pocket, his eyes brightening. She's flying out this afternoon and insists on getting the license before she leaves. She was whining so much, I couldn't say no. Brandon raised an eyebrow. What about the wedding? What's the rush? Julian was extremely nonchalant. The ceremony will take over an hour anyway. I'll just pop over to the clerk's office. 10 minutes, and I'll be done. You know what Vivian is like. If I don't coax her properly, she'll actually throw a fit at the airport. Hearing this, Brandon knew better than to say more. Julian turned back to me, draping an arm around my shoulder as if nothing had happened, and told the photographer to raise his camera. Here, take one for me. A souvenir. A single, ridiculously perfunctory click. He looked down at his watch, his tone as casual as if he were mentioning something trivial. All right, that's it for now. I have to go, or I'll be late. With that, he strode toward another car. Julian Vance. I stood my ground and called after him. His footsteps paused for a beat. He turned to look at me, his face still holding the indifference of someone who always held the upper hand. If you leave today, I looked him straight in the eye, each word clear and decisive. I will change the groom. He froze for a second, then burst out laughing. The laugh was arrogant, dismissive, and so confident it was sickening. Change the groom? He looked at me as if he'd just heard the world's funniest joke. Who are you going to find? Do you think real life is a TV show? Everyone in this city knows you're my dada. Woman. He paused, then deliberately added, as if both teasing and patronizing. Me, of course, if you really have the skills to find someone who dares to marry you, it's not like I wouldn't let you. With that, he opened the car door, turning back to drop one last, light, but incredibly arrogant line. Stop fooling around. Be good and wait for me to come back. I know my limits with my fun on the side, understand? The groomsmen behind us exchanged uneasy glances. Brandon took 2 steps forward, his voice strained. Julian, are you really leaving? You guys just handle things here first. It's not like I'm not coming back. Julian slammed the car door, his voice clearly impatient. That girl is hard to handle. I don't want to cause myself more trouble. The car started immediately and sped off. I stood there, the train of my wedding dress blowing in the wind, so white it was cold. Beside me, the photographer held his camera, so embarrassed he was frozen in place. No one dared to speak. I looked down at the empty ring finger on my left hand and slowly curled my lips. Julian Vance, go ahead. Go get your marriage license. In that case, this multi-million-dollar wedding of the century. I'll take it. I lifted my dress and walked step by step into the cathedral. The guests were all seated, the MC was in place, and the wedding march played through that magnificent space. Everything was perfect, except for the groom. Brandon rushed after me, forcing a sociable smile. "Catherine, Julian had something urgent come up. He'll be right back. Why don't you rest for a bit?" Another groomsman, Kevin Ross, immediately chimed in, laughing awkwardly. Yes, Julian always knows his priorities. Today is your big day. He'll definitely be here soon." Exactly. Something this important, Julian would never mess up. The guys took turns, trying to cover for the groom who had abandoned his bride at the altar, as if he had just stepped out to run an errand. I silently glanced at the clock at the front of the cathedral. 10:40. I replied calmly, my voice light but cold. "I'll wait for him." I tactfully sent them away. Seeing that I wasn't making a scene, Brandon let out a visible sigh of relief and hurriedly had someone bring me tea and water. I would wait. It's just that the person I was waiting for, they didn't need to. No. This wedding had been hyped up for 3 months. Almost all the important figures from the groom's side were present. I glanced around, my eyes sweeping over every detail in the cathedral. The cascade of white roses by the Rosas Pals. Floor-to-ceiling windows, the crystal curtains hanging from the vaulted ceiling, the light reflecting like a dream. Even the font on the guests' place cards was custom designed at Julian's request. That's the kind of person he was. Whatever he did, he pushed it to the extreme. It was like that when he pursued me, and it was like that when he prepared for the wedding. He turned this wedding into the blank ends. Hottest topic in the city, a dream for countless women. It was a pity that even with betrayal, he did it in the most absolute, heartless way, leaving me no room for salvation, not even a decent explanation. In his logic, treating someone well and hurting them were never contradictory. And I, from beginning to end, had only one choice: accept it. No. I would end it my way. In the bridal suite, Helena Thorne, my best friend who had flown in to be my maid of honor, was helping me with my dress. Her face was cold with anger, her eyes filled with indignation. "Tell me, is Julian Vance out of his mind? Running off to get a marriage license with someone else on his wedding day? Who does he think he is?" She plopped down on the chair in frustration, yanking at her own bridesmaid dress until it was wrinkled. I thought he was just talking big. Even if he really meant it, did he have to pick today? Helena's voice suddenly choked, clearly more furious on my behalf than I was for myself. "Back when you two were planning the wedding, he searched every flower shop in the city just to find the perfect bouquet for you. When you tried on your dress, his eyes got red. He almost cried before you did. I was so jealous I could have died. I even went home and picked a fight with my own poor boyfriend." She paused, her voice dropping, growing cold with anger. "Who would have thought, the moment you turn your back, he does something so disgusting?" I said nothing, just scrolled through my phone. On social media, Vivian Monroe had just posted a new status. The attached photo was of a man's shirt and women's lingerie scattered on the floor, a blatant insinuation. The caption read, "Someone said they'd only be 10 minutes, but in the end, they couldn't bear to leave." She even deliberately turned on her location services. The location displayed was definitely not the city clerk's office. Below, a mutual friend had already commented, "Vivian, who are you trying to provoke?" Vivian replied immediately, "Someone is probably fuming, waiting in their Sebet wedding dress for a person who isn't coming." I calmly took a screenshot, my expression unchanging. "Catherine, don't wait anymore." Helena snatched the phone from my hand, so angry her voice trembled. "Look at this. What kind of person is he? The moment he graduated, you immediately came back for him. Do you know how angry your sply parents were? Julian Vance was nothing back then. Yet you bet 10 years against your own parents. And now? You've lost everything. If you hadn't stayed up all those nights working on proposals and securing funding, secretly using your reputation as a shipping magnate's daughter to boost his projects, would he be where he is today? And the moment he makes it, he's fooling around with an investor's daughter. I really didn't expect him to be such a good actor, acting right up until the night before the wedding, before letting you find out he was in a hotel room with someone else." The more Helena spoke, the more agitated she became, her eyes red with pity for me. Catherine, don't wait. You have to live. For yourself. Helena, I called her name softly, my voice still very light. Thank you for coming today. As for my parents, after I handle this wedding, I'll go back and admit defeat. If you make a bet, you have to accept the loss. Today was the day. I paid the price for this failed bet. I was reassuring her, and also myself. I stepped out onto the balcony at the end of the hall for some air, but just as I reached for the door, I heard men's voices from inside. The groomsmen were hiding there, smoking. No way, is Julian really not coming back? He said Vivian is too clingy, he can't get away. Told us to just stall for as long as we can. Brandon Croft took a drag from his cigarette, squinting. Tell me, with Catherine's personality, how long can she stand it? Look at her today. Still wearing the dress, still walking the aisle, no groom in sight, and her expression hasn't changed a bit, someone marveled. To have a wife like that, what more could a man ask for? Kevin Ross sighed, half joking. Julian really is blessed and doesn't know it. He doesn't have the mind for that right now, another guy sneered. That little vixen, Vivian Monroe, has him wrapped around her finger. She's sucked his soul right out. The group burst into laughter again. Just then, someone made a video call. Julian, you finally answered. Catherine is still waiting. It's not good if you don't come back. From the other end came ambiguous, suggestive sounds that needed no explanation. Can't you see I'm busy? Julian's voice came through, laced with impatience, the hoarseness of post-coital bliss. I can't make it back. You guys just entertain the relatives and friends properly for me. Right, Julian, you handle your business. Brandon chuckled. Catherine is easy to please anyway. The words had barely left his mouth when I pushed open the balcony door and stepped out. In an instant, the smiles on the men's faces froze. Brandon frantically hid the phone behind his back, stammering, Catherine. I looked them straight in the eye, my voice calm and cold. The wedding will begin in 3 minutes. What are you all hiding here for? There are over 300 guests waiting outside. Are you going to keep them waiting? Or are you going to let this entire cathedral watch a joke? At my words, the guys laughed again, but this time, it was clearly forced. Catherine, don't joke. Kevin Ross laughed and waved his hand. 3 minutes isn't enough. Our Julian isn't that quick. It's more than enough, I cut him off flatly. Then I turned and walked away. Just then, Brandon remembered the video call was still on. He looked down at the caller's screen, smiling placatingly. Julian, Catherine said the wedding starts in 3 minutes. You should hurry. From the other end, came Julian's low, lazy, and arrogant laugh, still tinged with the aftertaste of lovemaking. 3 minutes? Does this woman have some kind of misunderstanding about me? It was immediately followed by a woman's coquettish giggle from the receiver, so soft it was grating. Julian. Brandon spoke cautiously. So, now. The line was silent for 2 seconds. Then Julian's voice came through, clearly. Impatient. Go out first. Hold the fort for me. I'll come over when I'm done. Here. When he said the words done here, a woman's moan sounded in the propitious background. Brandon immediately hung up in a fluster. The men quickly stubbed out their cigarettes, adjusted their ties and jackets, and filed out of the balcony. As they caught up to me, Kevin Ross lowered his voice, trying to sound worldly. Catherine, we've all seen how things have been between you and Julian, all these years. He definitely has you in his heart. It's just that, well, he's a man. You understand. I didn't even look at him, let alone reply. The truth is, until yesterday, I didn't want to believe that Julian Vance had also contracted the common disease of men with a little success. Always wanting something new. Vivian Monroe was the daughter of a wine industry investor, a recent college graduate. From the moment they met at a celebration party, the way he looked at her was no longer pure. At the time, I thought I was overthinking it. We had been together for 10 years, after all. If I didn't understand him, I wouldn't have persisted for so long. So many ambiguous moments, many unanswered late-night messages, I chose to trust him. I didn't believe that 2 people who had gone through thick and thin together, who were about to get married, would lose to a girl fresh out of college. But he gradually stopped wanting to hide it, as if he was tired of wearing a mask for too long, and began to tear it off, bit by bit, revealing a more intelligible, more ridiculous and shameless true face. He didn't just not hide it. He deliberately let me find out. Then packaged his betrayal as a kind of favor, bestowed upon me. A man as outstanding as me can't just have one woman. But my heart is yours. The position of Mrs. Vance, no one can have it but you. He wanted me to be grateful, to be indebted to him. Helena was right. He was too good an actor, acting right up until the night before the wedding, before finally tearing off the last layer of disguise, using the cruelest way to let me see and hear for myself what I was in his eyes. He acted to the point where he left me no way out. Catherine, when you walk down the aisle later, just go slowly. We'll be behind you, backing you up. Yes, yes, Julian said to wait for him to finish up and come over. You just go out to the stage first, and do a quick round. They thought I was just going to make an appearance, that I would wear the Tels Prawns wedding dress, walk down the aisle alone, stand before the priest, and quietly wait for a groom who might never show up, then smile, and say I do to an empty space. That was the script Julian Vance had left for me. The groomsmen stood on either side, their faces still wearing the smiles of people who thought everything was under control. The grand doors of the cathedral slowly opened. In the backlit silhouette at the entrance, a figure stood. And in that instant, the smiles on everyone's faces froze solid. Julian Vance took a drag from his cigarette and casually buckled his belt. Are you really going? Vivian Monroe sat on the bed wrapped in a blanket, a displeased look on her face. Didn't you say you'd stay with me today? I even postponed the marriage license appointment for you. Now you're just leaving? I have to go. Julian picked up his jacket, his tone somewhat rushed. She gave me 3 minutes. If I don't go, you know her personality. What personality? Vivian pouted, her tone full of disdain. Isn't she always the most reasonable one? Reasonable is one thing, but today is different. Julian adjusted his shirt collar in the mirror, a rare serious look on his face. This wedding of the century was my promise to her. Then why did you come to me? Weren't you the one who insisted I come? Julian laughed, walking over and pinching her cheek. Be good. I'll come back to you tonight. Vivian immediately swatted his hand away and turned to the side. What about the marriage license? Postponed until when? We'll figure it out later, Julian replied perfunctorily, grabbing his phone from the nightstand. The screen lit up, and a flood of messages appeared. They were all mentions of his name in their group chat. Voice messages overlapped, and the last message was a video sent by Brandon Croft. He frowned and casually played it. In an instant, his pupils contracted. What's wrong? Vivian turned to look, and seeing his expression, she was startled too. The hand holding the phone trembled slightly. In the video, a woman in a wedding dress was smiling brightly. The camera angle shifted, and next to her was a man with a boutonniere on his lapel, his demeanor calm and his posture proud. He was clearly the groom. The scene was so harmonious that anyone would think it was their wedding. But that wedding dress, he had chosen it himself. That sea of white roses, he had ordered it himself. This entire wedding, from start to finish, was his own painstaking plan. How could this be? Impossible. He muttered to himself, as if trying to convince himself. Catherine Price had been with him for 10 years. How could he not understand what that meant? Moreover, the man standing next to her was Adrian Covington, his number one enemy, and the person he thought Catherine should hate the most. From the early days of their business, Adrian Covington had, for some unknown reason, always targeted her, as if he wanted nothing more than to see her fall. Adrian was the eldest grandson of the Covingtons, an old money family from the Procedit East Coast. Their empire spanned real estate, shipping, and media. Even the 70 Vance family, at its peak, had to show some deference to them. How could a man of his stature be interested in Catherine? It wasn't that he looked down on Catherine, but Adrian's circle had always been filled with socialites, heiresses. Catherine was, of course, outstanding and beautiful, but to outsiders, her background was too ordinary. Her father was, after all, just a case in it. Small-time businessman. How could a man like Adrian lower himself to marry a woman who wasn't his social equal? Besides, no one knew better than him how much Catherine loved him. Back when the Ennis ended, Vance's family went bankrupt, falling from grace to become the laughingstock of the city. Creditors came knocking every day, hounding them relentlessly. No one dared to help. He had hit rock bottom, drowning himself in bars, living like a dashed man who had lost all will. It was Catherine who shouldered all the pressure. She gathered all her savings, knelt before him, looked up at him, and said, "You still have me." For his project, she traveled to 12 cities alone, working tirelessly, even being hospitalized from exhaustion, but she never stopped. After all that hardship, they had finally made it to this day, to this wedding of the century. How could she turn around and marry someone else? Julian took a deep breath, forcing himself to calm down, and immediately called Brandon. The phone rang for a long time before it was answered. The other end was chaotic, filled with shouts, murmurs, and the clamor of a crowd. Julian, Brandon's voice was dazed, clearly still in shock. "What's going on? What is going on?" Julian nearly shouted. "At my wedding with Catherine, why? Did you let him in? Don't you know the person Catherine hates most is him?" There was a 3-second silence on the other end. "The Covingtons are so powerful. How could guys like us dare to stop him? Besides, even if we invited him, he might not have come. How are we supposed to know?" The blood in Julian's veins boiled, rushing to his head. "He's deliberately trying to disgust me," he gritted out, each word firm. "Catherine has been trying to disgust me for 10 years. Everyone in this city knows. Adrian Covington might not care about face, but does the Covington family not care either?" On the other end, Brandon finally spoke, but this time, his voice was laced with an indescribable bitterness. "Julian. You should watch the second video I sent." The aisle stretched out endlessly. A river of white roses flowed from their feet to the altar. Petals layered upon each other, so white they were almost blinding. Adrian Covington's lips curled into the leisurely smile of a cunning fox. "Actually, I'm not greedy." He tilted his head to look at me, his voice as faint as the wind. "A wedding doesn't matter. Just give me the marriage license, and that's enough." I laughed. "Preparing a wedding isn't easy." I looked up, my eyes sweeping over the crystal curtains hanging from the vaulted ceiling, and continued slowly. "Fresh flowers, a live band, 300 guests, a 3-star Michelin reception. It's all laid out for us. Since it's free, why not use it?" The smile on his face didn't change, but his eyes grew a layer deeper, so deep they were hard to read. I took a step closer, lowering my voice. "On the contrary, Mr. Covington." I looked up, my gaze meeting his directly. "You just got the license and already have a car waiting in the back alley of the cathedral, a custom-tailored suit ready to be changed into. And you say a wedding doesn't matter?" Adrian's eyelashes fluttered, just a slight, almost imperceptible movement, like a calm lake surface being hit by a pebble, the ripples disappearing before they could even spread. But I knew I had hit his weak spot. In his eyes was the talamite excitement of someone who had just met a worthy opponent. "Catherine Price," he said my name. No explanation, no denial. "A free wedding. I'll play along with you." He leaned down, his breath brushing against my forehead, his voice low and enchanting. "As you said just now." He paused, his thumb slowly tracing a circle on the back of my hand. "I'll consider it." "Interest." I looked up at him. He said nothing more, just silently took my hand and turned with me toward the altar. The organ music swelled into the wedding march. We took our first steps on the aisle. On either side, the guests' eyes turned toward us like a rising tide. Some whispered, some secretly took pictures, and the groomsmen's faces were so ugly, they looked like they had just swallowed a whole egg. Adrian's pace was neither fast nor slow. The pressure of his hand was just right, not too tight, but not giving me a chance to pull away. The second step. The third. The white roses trembled slightly under our feet. I tilted my head to look at him. He didn't look back, only the curve of his lips lifted a little more. His expression clearly said, "You're not getting away." In the pews, the groom's family section had completely erupted. Uncles and aunts, their faces pale, whispered among themselves. Someone was so angry, they blurted out that this was completely outrageous. The groomsmen's side was even more chaotic. They wanted to rush onto the stage, but were pushed back down by security. They wanted to take out their phones to report the news, only to find their phones had been confiscated. Only then did they truly understand that this wedding was never a game they could control, and certainly not a place where they had any right to manipulate. The priest's white robe came into view. He opened the Bible and cleared his throat. "Do you, Catherine Price, take?" Before he could finish, a loud noise came from behind. The grand doors of the cathedral were violently thrown open. "She does not." Julian Vance's voice, mixed with ragged breaths and fury, rushed in with the sunlight from outside. "Catherine Price, you get down here." Brandon, seeing his savior, rushed over. "Julian, Catherine." She walked the 5-whole aisle with Adrian Covington. "I couldn't stop her," he panted, his voice cracking. "Luckily you saw the second video I sent and rushed over." That video was secretly filmed by Brandon from a side hallway. In the frame, on the long aisle, I walked step by step toward Adrian, and with my own hand, I placed it in his. Julian knew better than anyone. I hated Adrian, even more than I hated him. Logically, at today's wedding, the first person I should have thrown out was Adrian. But I didn't. Not only did I not throw him out, but the way I looked at Adrian, Julian had never seen me look at any other man that way. The priest stood frozen at the altar, Bible in hand. I didn't turn around, just said calmly, "Please continue, Father." My voice wasn't loud, but the moment it fell, Julian's face turned ashen. "Catherine Price," he strode onto the aisle. "Have you had enough of this?" In his eyes, besides fury, there was disbelief, and deeper still, a flicker of panic he was trying desperately to suppress. "What kind of game are you playing? You've been with me for 10 years. What kind of person are you?" "Don't I know?" "Do you know what kind of person Adrian Covington is?" "He has no shortage of debut socialites by his side. Do you think he'd really be interested in you? You're standing here with him now. Are you trying to make me jealous, or do you want the whole city to see you as a joke?" He sneered, his gaze sweeping from me to Adrian, his tone growing more and more harsh. "Don't let someone play with you for a bit and think you're the winner." He pressed closer. I had heard that arrogant tone for 10 years. "You come down now, and I can pretend today never happened. I'll give you another wedding. You'll still be Mrs. Vance." With that, he lifted his chin slightly, as if waiting for me to soften, to break down, to run crying into his arms. The cathedral was silent. I turned to look at him, at the man I had loved for 10 years, the man I had endured for 10 years, humbling myself to the very dust, yet still not receiving even a shred of respect in return. And then I smiled faintly, a very light smile, as if I had finally understood something. I turned to look at Adrian. Then, I stood on my toes, wrapped my arms around his neck, pulled his head down, and kissed him. The moment our lips met, I felt his body tense for a fraction of a second. Just 1 second. The next, his arm was around my waist, pulling me tight against him. So hard it was as if he wanted to crush me into his chest. Like a predator that had been starving for too long, finally seeing its prey walk right into its grasp. No more patience, no more calculation. He kissed me back fiercely, decisively, almost stealing my breath away. A collective gasp went through the cathedral. The older guests awkwardly turned away, covering their eyes. The younger ones were so stunned their mouths hung open. Everyone felt that if this went on for another second, it would cross an second line they shouldn't be witnessing. Julian's voice broke through, sharp and strangled. "Catherine Price." I paid him no mind. It was Adrian who let go of me first. His breathing was still ragged. His thumb brushed against the corner of my lips, his voice so hoarse and deep, it was almost a whisper. "You started it." He paused, the corners of his lips slowly curving up. His dark eyes finally lit up completely. It was a possessive desire so bright it was searing. "This time, I'm not letting you go." With that, he tilted his head and gestured to the security guards behind him. "Escort Mr. Vance out." 4 guards in black suits, tall and well-built, moved with practiced efficiency, immediately closing in on Julian. Before he could recover from my calling us counterattack, his arms were restrained. His eyes turned bloodshot in an instant, his voice shattering. "Adrian Covington, I spent 3 months preparing this wedding. What right do you have to steal my wedding, to steal my woman? Don't you forget that multi-billion-dollar project your Covington family has been eyeing it for 3 years. In the end, whose hands did the permit fall into? He paused, a cruel, triumphant look on his face. And Mr. Covington, you're so generous, aren't you? A woman who's been with me for 10 years, to the point where even I'm bored of her, and you're treating her like a treasure, bringing her to the altar. If this gets out, aren't you afraid the whole East Coast will laugh at the great young master of the Covington family for picking up someone else's leftovers? He wanted to say more, but he was dragged out by the guards. Adrian looked down at me, his eyes a bottomless dark. His words just now. I don't care, I cut him off. His lips curled slightly, but in his eyes was a flicker of pain, so deep it was hard to name. I squeezed my own hand and turned back to the priest. Please. Continue, Father. From outside, Julian's shouts had turned into broken sobs. No, Catherine. Catherine, don't continue. I'm back. I didn't get the license with Vivian, I didn't. Do you hear me? This wedding of the century was my promise to you. It was for you, and for me. In my entire life, this is the first time I've ever truly wanted to marry someone. His voice became more and more fragmented until it completely disappeared behind the cathedral doors. The priest closed the Bible and solemnly declared, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Adrian took a ring from his inner jacket pocket. A single glance was enough to tell it hadn't been prepared in a day or two. He took my hand, his touch so gentle, it was almost reverent, and slowly slid the ring onto my finger. Done. He looked at me, his voice low and firm. In college, I let you run away. Later, I even had my father go to your house to win over my future in-laws, hoping our families would settle our marriage. But you still ran. His lips curled. This time, don't even think about running. I laughed. My parents had made it very clear. 10 years was the deadline, and the line in the sand. 10 years later, if I could bring Julian Vance home with my head held high, they would accept this son-in-law. If I lost the bet, I had to come home and marry obediently. And the punishment they spoke of was Adrian Covington. During those years, I buried myself in work, constantly proving myself. I often traveled for projects, and the time I spent with Julian grew less and less, the distance between us wider. But the number of times I ran into Adrian Covington, my arch-rival on major projects, at investment conferences, or at the Bassins' negotiating table, was more than the number of times I saw my own supposed boyfriend. It was just that his professional, impassive face had always been a blur in my memory. The intense confrontations, the probing, the battles of Wits, all that was left in my mind was a vague outline of a man who was always on the opposite side, incredibly difficult to deal with. Until this very moment. I looked down at the ring on my finger, and a few old memories flashed through my mind. In high school, I loved design. I used to secretly fill sketchbook after sketchbook with jewelry designs. But my father said that studying management and inheriting the family business was the right path. Design was just a pastime for those who didn't know how to handle real business. One day, he visited me at school and accidentally found my hidden sketchbook. He crumpled up the page in anger, and threw it in the trash right in front of me. What's the use of drawing this? That sketch from all those years ago had now become the ring on my finger. It turned out that when everyone was forcing me to give up my dream, there was one person who quietly picked it up for me, kept it for 10 years, just to wait for this day, to put it on my finger himself. My eyes reddened for a moment. I took a deep breath and took the other ring from Helena. I took his hand and slowly slid the ring onto his finger. The moment it was in place, he gently curled his finger, hooking the tip of mine. It was a very light touch, but it was enough to make one's heart tremble. The entire hall erupted in applause. I looked up, wanting to see his expression, but at that exact moment, the grand doors of the cathedral were once again thrown open. 2 police officers in uniform walked in. Behind them was Julian Vance. It's him. Julian pointed directly at Adrian, who was holding my hand at the Sis altar, his voice rushed and furious. This man broke into my wedding, stole my Talfert bride, caused a disturbance, and disrupted a legal wedding. I demand that you arrest him immediately. He glanced around, as if afraid his words weren't convincing enough, and added, this wedding was single-handedly prepared by me, Julian Vance. The flowers, the venue, the reception, the invitations, every das. Single thing was paid for by me. Everyone here can testify. The two officers looked at Adrian, then at the packed hall, their tone objective and professional. Excuse me, is what Mr. Vance just stated the truth? The hall fell silent, so quiet you could almost hear a pin drop. Even Julian's family didn't dare to speak up for him at this moment. In the end, it was I who spoke. Officer, this wedding is between my husband and me. There is no problem at all. In an instant, all eyes turned to me. Then may I ask who your husband is? The officer asked. I tilted my head slightly, looking at the man who had been holding my hand all along, as steady and solid as a mountain. He is, right here beside me. I answered, each word clear. Adrian Covington. Julian's body shuddered, as if he had just been dealt a heavy blow to the chest. The shock was not just anger, nor was it pain, but a disbelief so profound it was staggering. Perhaps even he had never imagined that the woman who had once been inseparable from him, who would marry no one else, could stand next to another man and say his name with such certainty. I gave Helena a slight nod. She immediately understood, took a file from my bag, and handed it to the police. This is the venue rental contract, the payment, receipts for the flowers, and the catering service agreement. I said calmly. All the documents were signed in my name. Mr. Vance here only assisted with some of the on-site decorations. I paused, looking straight at Julian, and continued slowly. This wedding, from beginning to end, was prepared by me, for myself. Julian's face immediately turned gray. The Vance family's section of the pews erupted. The groomsmen on the other side couldn't hold back any longer. Brandon was the first to rush out, pointing at me, his voice trembling with emotion. Catherine Price, do you have any conscience? Julian stayed up so many nights for this wedding, and now you're saying it's your wedding with another man? What do you take him for? Free labor? Kevin Ross also rushed forward, joining in indignantly. That's right. Julian treated you with his whole heart. And what about you? You turn around and marry his rival, using the very effort he put in to fulfill your own plans. Catherine Price, isn't that too cruel? Julian stood frozen in place. He didn't argue, didn't get angry, didn't even shed another tear. He just stared at me, as if wanting to pierce me with his gaze. After a long time, he spoke, his voice hoarse. Catherine Price, didn't I come back? You've been with me for 10 years. Have I ever truly let you down? Yes, I was foolish recently, I was wrong. But in my heart, you have always been there. Aren't you the one who understands me best? He took a deep breath, his voice trembling visibly. But look at him. What kind of person is Adrian Covington? Do you really know? Do you remember what he did just last week? The project fell into my hands, and he has always held a grudge. A person like him, will he really treat you well? I'm telling you, he's just using you to get back at me. He slowly reached his hand out to me, palm up. It was a gesture I was all too familiar with. In countless times before, whenever I was angry, he would use time. That gesture to coax me. Come here, Catherine, his voice dropped to almost a blank plea. I won't neglect you anymore. I promise. Come back with me. Let's start over, okay? His hand hung in the air, trembling slightly. 1 second, 2 seconds, 3. Then I heard my own voice, as calm and cold as still water. Julian Vance, it's too late. On his face, the anger, the grievance, the self-pity, the pleading, all these emotions seemed to drain away in an instant. The two officers took the documents, examined them, and then turned to Julian. Mr. Vance, this party can provide full documentation, proving this is a wedding they organized themselves. There was no trespassing or disruption as you claimed. One officer paused, then continued in a clear, official tone, you just alleged that the bride may be committing bigamy. May I ask what legal relationship this woman has with you? Julian opened his mouth but couldn't get a word out. The officer continued. Have you and she registered your marriage? Silence. Is there a legal engagement document or agreement? Still silence. Then on what basis do you claim she is your bride? Basis? Julian, like a drowning man clutching at a final straw, hurriedly fumbled for his phone, frantically searching for photos of us and our text conversations, and showed them to the police. Isn't this enough? His voice rose again, so urgent, it was almost a shriek. We've been together for 10 years. These messages, these photos, isn't this enough to prove she's my woman? The officer glanced at it, and before he could speak, I slowly took out a small, red booklet. I held it out to the police, and also to Julian. Julian Vance, I looked him straight in the eye. Open your eyes, and look clearly. My voice fell, so articulate, that every word rang in the ears of everyone in the Tapetus Cathedral. Adrian Covington and I are already legally married. Today's wedding is not bigamy. It's a belated celebration. Julian's face changed colors in an instant, from flushed red to pale white, and then to a deathly gray. His eyes were glued to the marriage certificate, where the names Catherine Price and Adrian Covington stood side by side, clear, cold, and undeniable. His pupils seemed to lose focus. You, since when? One of the officers frowned, his tone becoming stern. Mr. Vance, their marital status is completely legal. There is no bigamy. Your act of reporting a false crime constitutes a misuse of police resources. If you do it again, we will handle it according to the law. With that, the two officers left. Julian remained rooted to the spot, like a WWW tree struck by lightning, burnt out from the inside. He looked at me, his lips moving several times, finally managing to utter a hoarse sound. Catherine. This wedding. It was me. I promised you. Brandon finally regained his senses, and gently pulled his arm. Julian, let's go. They're already married. But Julian didn't move. He just stared at me, his voice choked and bitter. Catherine, I did say I'd give her the marriage license, but I never went through with it. I went there, and then I remembered the way you look at me. Remembered your smile. And I realized I couldn't really go through with marrying her, so I deliberately stalled. His Adam's apple bobbed violently, as if he had to use all his strength to continue. 10 years. Yet when you went to marry someone else, you didn't hesitate for even a second? I laughed out loud, a laugh that held no warmth, only a sharp, cold clarity. You stalled, not because you suddenly felt remorse. You were just scared of how to explain things to her family. I looked straight at his ashen face, each word clear, leaving him no room for retreat. And I didn't hesitate because law have the right to make me hesitate. Adrian took my hand and led me down from the altar. As we passed Julian, he leaned in close to his ear, his voice faint, but every word like a knife. So sorry. The marriage license is mine. The wedding is mine. He paused, glanced at me, and his lips curled slightly. The person, too. I smiled faintly. No objections. Actually, the story between me and Adrian started even before Julian. In high school, we were at an elite boarding school. The security was almost military grade. School buses ran on a strict schedule. Outsiders couldn't even get past the main gate. My parents sent me there to learn to take over the process. Family business, but to me, it was a gilded cage, so suffocating it was. Unbearable. I was a bit rebellious then. I'd sneak out for bubble tea during gym class and read comics on the rooftop during study hall. In complete contrast, Adrian, in the class next door, was known for being quiet. So quiet, I sometimes wondered if he was real. He didn't join any cliques, didn't run for student council. In an environment where everyone was competing, he was like a shadow outside it all. And for some reason, I loved to poke at that shadow. One evening in 11th grade, I cornered him at the end of the hallway. He was holding a book, heading to the library. When I blocked his path, he just looked up at me. His dark eyes were devoid of emotion, but he didn't look away. Adrian Covington, do you not know how to smile? I stood on my toes, getting closer. He took half a step back, his back hitting the wall, the book still held neatly in his hands. So, smile for me. He didn't smile, but his eyelashes fluttered. I found it amusing, and leaned in closer. He tilted his head to avoid me, but his lips accidentally brushed against the corner of mine. It was just a light touch, but the heat in that moment was real. He had no obvious reaction, but my face immediately burned. I refused to lose. I maintained a calm facade, and with a voice that even I knew was shaky, I said, "You're the worst reactor of all the people I've kissed." The truth was, I had never kissed anyone before. He was the first. But I would have died before admitting it. I turned and ran. That night, I couldn't sleep. After that, I never dared to corner him again. It wasn't until many years later, at a business event, the first time he lost a project bid to me, that he suddenly brought it up. Actually, that day. He paused, then continued, I did it on purpose. I was stunned. When you leaned in, I could have easily turned my head away. He lowered his eyes, a faint, foxy smile on his lips. But I didn't want to. At the time, I just thought he was a sore loser, using old stories to save face. In the first semester of 12th grade, I couldn't take the pressure of that school anymore. I laid my cards on the table with my parents and insisted on transferring to the city to take my college entrance exams. They couldn't sway me and finally gave in. So I left that place and went to that bustling city. And there, I met Julian Vance. At that time, the Vance family hadn't fallen yet. He was a teenager with a bright, charming smile, flamboyant and dazzlingly arrogant. Completely different from the quiet, reserved young masters at my old school. Even after graduation, when I went to study abroad, I still remembered that smile so clearly. As for Adrian, I knew he was at the same university, but apart from a few chance encounters, we never actively sought each other out. It was much later that I heard from others that during those years, he had been quietly keeping an eye on me. He knew my major, where I lived, which library I frequented. Those seemingly accidental encounters were all deliberately arranged. It was just that I never realized it then. He had even planned to confess to me on graduation day. It was a pity I didn't attend. I had booked a flight back to the city early that morning. All because Julian Vance said he missed me. Later, Julian and I started our business together. My strengths were on the East Coast, so the number of times I encountered Adrian grew. Even though I knew it was just business competition, for a while, I truly hated him. He knew exactly how much Julian and I needed to win that landmark project to prove my worth to my parents. Yet he wouldn't yield an inch. Everyone in the company knew that their Miss Price had an arch-nemesis, the kind of rival you could coldly slam documents down in front of at a bidding conference, the kind who could knock over your coffee at a negotiation table. But no one expected that these two fiercely opposed people would end up sharing a bed. The day I brought Adrian home, my parents were so happy their eyes crinkled with joy. My father personally came to the door to greet him, holding his hand and saying, "Good, good, good," 3 times in a row. My mother secretly wiped away tears, murmuring, "It's good that you're back, it's good that you're back." For a rare moment, Adrian put away his foxy demeanor. He respectfully called out, "Mom, Dad." That alone was enough to make them beam. At the dinner table, my father mentioned the land reclamation project he had. I'd been planning for 3 years. It was actually bait my parents had deliberately set. After watching me struggle for 10 years, the Vance Corporation's bid was approved almost immediately after submission. For 10 years, they had watched from the sidelines, watching me and Julian build from nothing, run projects, negotiate partnerships, bear risks, and slowly lift the company up. They finally had to admit that besides my stubbornness, I had a natural talent for business. Daring, decisive, and knowing my limits. So, even though they disliked their future son-in-law, they decided to let their daughter have this victory. They just didn't expect the wedding to turn out this way. That project, my father sipped his tea, squinting at Adrian with a half-smile, was the welcome gift I intended for my son-in-law. That Vance boy didn't have the fortune. So, son-in-law, he slowly set his teacup down, "Are you interested?" Adrian placed a piece of pork rib in my bowl, his tone casual. "I'll listen to my wife." That's what he said, but in reality, from the day we got our license, he had completely lost control. Before, to have more chances to see me, he would still yield a little. At the time, I thought he was giving face to my father. It was only much later that my mother told me my father had once half-jokingly threatened him that if he was going to take care of me, he had to do it for a lifetime. Adrian, caught in the middle, had always known his limits. But now, he had nothing to hold him back. He directly pulled the last life-saving straw from Julian Vance. The news reached Julian when he was drinking. On the coffee table, on the floor, empty bottles were scattered everywhere. He lay on the sofa, looking at the empty house that had lost the warmth of the person he once wanted to keep. His eyes bloodshot. No matter what his friends said, it was useless. She's just angry. She'll cool down in a few days. Impossible. Even if she really changed her mind, it would never be Adrian Covington. Brandon finally couldn't stand it anymore, and brought Vivian Monroe over. But the moment Vivian walked in, Julian lunged at her like a madman, grabbing her by the throat and pinning her against the wall. That day, you deliberately got me drunk. You were the one who climbed into my bed. And then you said your father would invest more. His voice was almost distorted. Where's the money? Why did he pull out in the end? Vivian was so scared, she turned pale, stammering, unable to speak. How was she supposed to know what had influenced her father, to the point where he wouldn't even listen to his own daughter anymore? A man who cheats either never does it, or once he starts, he does it countless times. Julian, of course, didn't want to admit that. He just kept repeating his excuse that he had mistaken Vivian for me that day, and slept with her. He was dirty now, had betrayed me. Since he had betrayed me, it seemed there was no reason to stay clean anymore. He deceived himself into believing it was all for the investment. But the truth was, Vivian's young, passionate body had drawn him in long ago. The irony was that I had never found out. And the more I didn't find out, the more he wanted me to know, to see, to accept. As long as I accepted, he would be relieved. Only now did he feel regret. Regret for not turning back at the first misstep. Regret for being too confident, for thinking that I had only one place to return to. Him. He didn't even know who his real rival was, so he had never been on guard. That night, he smashed his phone and roared into the empty air all night. Why? On what grounds? The company lost its pillar, key projects were stalled, and the breach of TALV contract compensation offered was nothing compared to the hole left by the Taster withdrawn investment. He frantically investigated and finally discovered that the shipping magnate, Marcus Price, had a daughter so well hidden almost no one knew about her. Her name was Catherine Price. The moment he found out, he understood everything. He finally understood why Catherine could command such influence, why he could rise to become the most brilliant young man in the city. The small-time businessman father-in-law, he Levanti, had never bothered to look at twice. Turned out to be the titan who could manipulate the entire shipping fate of the region. He knelt in front of the Price family estate, in the rain, all night, just to see me once. When the butler came to inform me, I was curled up in Adrian's arms, watching a movie. I'm not seeing him, I said. Adrian leaned down and kissed the top of my head, his voice full of amusement. My dear wife, you are most beautiful when you are ruthless. The rain fell all night. Julian knelt all night. The next morning, at dawn, there was no one left at the gate, only a rain-soaked envelope. Inside was to ring the one I had taken off the night before the wedding. I told the butler to throw it away. This time, I wouldn't be picking up trash again.